Good afternoon. The meeting will now come to order. Hello, I am Cynthia McCabe, Superintendent of Schools. I am serving as the presiding officer for this meeting until we complete our officer elections on the agenda. I would like to welcome you to the December 14th, 2022 board meeting. In keeping with the board's commitment to open communication with the community, this meeting is being streamed live on the CCPS website at www.carrollk12.org and broadcast live on Channel 21. We are also recording this meeting so that it can be accessed on demand on our website and broadcast through the month on Channel 21. Public participation will be held at approximately 5:15 p.m. Speakers will be directed into the boardroom from the building lobby and are allotted 3 minutes to address the board. As a reminder, please silence all cell phones and other devices. Board members, please turn off your microphones when you are not speaking. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mrs. Tyra Battaglia, Dr. Patricia Dorsey, and Mr. Stephen Whistler, please come forward to be officially seated as a member of the Board of Education of Carroll County at this time. Mrs. Battaglia, Dr. Dorsey, and Mr. Whistler were elected by the voters at the November general election, received their commissions from the governor, and have been properly sworn in to the oath of office by the clerk of the court of Carroll County. Mrs. Battaglia, Dr. Dorsey, and Mr. Whistler are hereby seated as members of the Board of Education of Carroll County, Maryland for a 4-year term, December 2022 through December 2026. Now, I declare the office of the President of the Board of Education of Carroll County vacant and ask for nominations for this office.
Superintendent McCabe, I would like to make a motion to nominate Ms. Marcia Herbert as the President of the Board of Education.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, seconded by Mr. Whistler. If there are no further nominations, all of those in favor of Marcia Herbert as President of the Board of Education, please indicate by raising your hand. 1, 2, 3.
I'll go with this. It's a surprise since she's already served one term. But
Okay, so any opposed? Okay, so it's unanimous. The motion carries.
now you better nominate me.
Mrs. Herbert?
Thank you all. Okay, here we go. Election of Vice President. I declare the office of Vice President of the Board of Education of Carroll County vacant and ask for nominations for this office.
I will nominate myself as Vice President of this Board of Ed.
Are there any seconds? All right, and then, if not,
Other nominations?
we'll do any other nominations.
I nominate Tyra Battaglia to be Vice President.
And we need a second?
I will second that.
And we'll call for the vote. If no further, all those in favor of Tyra Battaglia as Vice President of the Board of Education, please indicate by raising your hand. Opposed? Motion carries 4-1. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we need to be reseated based on the new elected president and vice president.
So that explains why I haven't heard.
and we will move forward. And I was proud to serve as president several years ago, and I'm proud to serve again. And you know how I run the meetings. Short and sweet and to the point, and we get the job done. All right, now I need a motion for the approval of the agenda.
So moved?
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right. Any comments, questions, additions, corrections? And then I will call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. And now I need a motion for the approval of the minutes of the November 9th Board of Education meeting.
So
November
moved.
9th. November 9th.
Yep.
Okay, and I need a second.
I'll second.
Comments, questions, corrections? I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Now I need a motion for the unapproved delegation meeting minutes, and there are revisions by Dr. Dorsey. I need a motion.
So moved.
So moved.
I'll second.
Comments, questions? Are there any more corrections? I call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. At this time, we will have the Carroll County Student Government Report by Emily. Thank you.
So I will be giving the CCSGA report on behalf of Nikki Zhang, our CCSGA president. Good evening, board members. I apologize for not being able to make it to this board meeting, but I look forward to seeing you all after the new year. Of course, I'd like to first congratulate Dr. Dorsey, Mrs. Battaglia, and Mr. Whistler for being sworn into the board last week. I do apologize for missing it, but it also just happened to be the same day as our CCSGA General Assembly. Our December General Assembly was hosted on December 7th at Francis Scott Key High School, and we are incredibly thankful for the resources and facilities that they provided us. Our December General Assembly has always catered towards service, so this year we decided to do Project Linus. Project Linus is an organization that donates new handmade blankets to children who are seriously ill, traumatized, or otherwise in need. These blankets provide love, a sense of security, warmth, and comfort. I'm proud to announce that we made 51 Linus blankets that are being donated to the Carroll County Pediatric Hospital. Additionally, my vice president, Flamatu Fafana, has been working with Grace Minikowski, the president of Calvert Association of Student Councils, on a virtual legislative workshop that will teach students how to write legislation. This has been a project that she has put a lot of energy into, and I'm incredibly happy to announce that this virtual meeting will be happening on January 12th from 7 to 8 p.m. This workshop is open to all students across the state who are interested in having their voice heard on the state level or who would just like more information about the operations regarding legislation. On top of that, I have been arranging president meetings with SGA presidents across the county to share ideas and discuss current projects that we are working on. I would like to thank all of the presidents for all the effort that they have been putting into their student governments to not only encourage student voice, but also form the foundation of CCSGA. Without all of you guys, CCSGA would not have been able to host the events that we do. I would like to thank our charity and outreach coordinator for organizing our upcoming charity project. This charity project will be in March and focus on Carroll County's own Shepherd Staff Homeless Shelter. Each school will have the option to choose from one of 4 different drives: emergency meals/snacks, toiletry items, household items, and blankets/socks. March is often a time when homeless shelters experience a lack of donations, so contributions from all CCPS middle and high schools will make a big difference. More information is being sent out to your SGA advisors after the holidays, so look out for information in February. I'm incredibly happy to announce that our CCSGA website was just launched, and while we are still working through a couple of things, I'm also so proud of our co-webmasters. They've been working on this project for a very long time. Next, I attended the Maryland Association of Student Councils meeting this past Saturday, December 10th. I was able to provide a report for CCSGA there, and I accepted an invitation to be a representative on the MASC Document Revisions Committee. Finally, student representative on the Board of Education applications are currently open. This application has been released to advisors, principals, and SGA presidents. So, if eligible freshmen or sophomores are interested in this position, please reach out to these individuals. Of course, I'm sure that Emily would be able to expand on the role of Schwab a little bit more, but I would like to reiterate a few things. This position is open for freshmen and sophomores only and is a 2-year commitment. In the first year of your term, you will serve as Schwab-elect, which is the position that Sahithya Sudhakar is currently in. The following year, you will actually sit on the Board of Education as Schwab, as Emily is doing. This is an incredibly important position, and we know that there are many students out there who are wholly capable of all of the responsibilities that come with being Schwab. That being said, applications are due on January 27th, 2023. And the application is open everywhere. Feel free to reach out to anyone previously mentioned, Emily, Sahi, or me for more information. CCSGA updated the voting process for Schwab last year, and voting this year will be conducted similarly. We will go through a primary election where the General Assembly of CCSGA will vote, and a general election where all high schoolers across the county will have an opportunity to vote. Those are all the updates I have for this meeting. Thank you so much for listening, and have a wonderful break in New Year.
Thank you very much. At this time, we will have public comments. Ms. Battaglia?
To have an orderly presentation of comments by the public, the following guidelines apply. Speakers with a connection to CCPS will be allowed to address the board for the allotted 3 minutes. Only those speakers will have registered online and have been notified by the Communications Department will be permitted to speak. Priority will be given to those citizens that are addressing the board about an item on the current agenda. Citizens not appearing in person for public comment can write to the board through email or U.S. mail. Public participation is not intended to be a question-and-answer session. However, if a citizen has specific questions, the superintendent will assign a staff member to make contact during the board meeting to arrange a time to respond to questions. The superintendent board serves the right to correct misinformation presented as factual after the conclusion of the public participation period. Statements to the board should be related to a recent agenda item, an item that is expected to appear in the future, or a matter of general policy over which the board has authority. Personnel matters, pending appeals, the actions or statements of individual staff, or items related to employee negotiations are not appropriate topics and may not be discussed. The board has scheduled time on the agenda for public participation at approximately 5:15 p.m. The board reserves the right to limit the number of speakers on a particular topic so that all topics may be addressed. Additionally, the board retains the discretion to allow additional speakers for its deemed appropriate. The board is allowing no more than an hour for public participation. Comments are limited to 3 minutes or less. All comments should be directed to the board members at the dais. Citizens may only address the board with their individual comments. Citizens may not stand in for another person or group and read their comments. When the allotted time expires, the speaker is permitted to complete a sentence. Citizens may leave any handouts for the board members on the table at the back of the boardroom. Please do not approach the dais. Additionally, the public may not display signs or posters during the board meeting. In lieu of signs, or if you are unable to complete your comments in the allotted time, individuals are encouraged to submit remarks to the board in writing. Those seated in the audience are asked to be respectful of the speaker and refrain from commenting to the speaker or to the board members. Names we have today, Joy Fisher. Is there a Joy Fisher here? Okay. Denise, I'm sorry if I mispronounced the last name.
Hi, it's Denise Appelfeld-Hendon. Denise Appelfeld-Hendon, sorry.
Yes.
I am a retired 30-year teacher, Carroll County. I am also the new chairperson for the CCEA Retired Committee, and that is why I'm here tonight. We are asking to be included in the board's vision and dental plans. Currently, when staff members retire, they are under the dental and vision COBRA plan for 18 months. And after that, we are on our own, and that can be really expensive. So we are asking to be continued under the board plan, and that we pay the group premium ourselves. So there would be no cost to CCPS, and according to Stephanie Rowland, much less paperwork. So on behalf of all retirees, past, present, future, we're asking that you grant permission for us to be included in the board's dental and vision plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did we have anybody else sign up? And the other lady is not here? Okay, we will move on. Employee groups, please. First.
Good evening, Superintendent McCabe, members of the Board of Education, and Commissioner Vigliotti. I am Cindy Porter, President of CASE, representing education support professionals who are assistants, clericals, and LPNs across Carroll County Public Schools. I would like to begin my remarks this evening by congratulating Dr. Dorsey and Mrs. Battaglia on their reelection and welcoming Mr. Whistler to the board. I look forward to the opportunity to work with all of you as we continue to support and serve the students of Carroll County. We are in a season deemed by a traditional holiday song as the most wonderful time of the year. While students are eagerly anticipating the upcoming holidays, I can confidently say that most CCPS staff are looking forward to the winter break as a lifeline to get a reprieve from the unbelievable stress of this year to date. As a career educator of over 23 years, I can honestly say this is the first year that I have heard many educators, non-certificated, licensed, and certificated, contemplating if they want to or can continue in education. As I have said before, I am unbelievably proud to represent those at ground zero. In other words, those assigned directly to or who work closely with students in small group situations, at recess, and at other times. These colleagues and peers, many who are among the lowest paid in our school system, are unbelievably weary, due mostly in part to the significant increase in behaviors throughout our school system that are causing daily disruption to learning and an increase in injuries that these staff members are sustaining in their assignments with these students. One student support assistant who has already sustained injury more than once this year was asked if she had considered applying for another position that would take her more out of harm's way. Her response? She said that she really loves working with the level of students she is currently assigned to and doesn't want to leave them. I have spoken at every board meeting since becoming CASE president on July 1st, and on more than one occasion, concern over funding mandated by the Blueprint for Maryland Education is addressed or a topic of concern. I am aware of the many complexities the mandate presents, but as we approach the budget season for CCPS, I ask you to take into consideration that education support professionals, the ones at ground zero dealing with these challenging student situations each and every day, were not included as part of the mandates. These very qualified staff members dedicated to our students more than deserve consideration for all they give each and every day. In closing, I hope that all of you, the staff, students, and families of Carroll County Public Schools, find the time to slow down for a moment and enjoy the upcoming winter break. Thank you.
Good evening, Superintendent McCabe, and welcome to Mr. Whistler. Welcome back to Dr. Dorsey and Ms. Battaglia. Herbert and Savigny, I guess welcome back to you too, and also welcome to our new commissioner here. I am Celeste Jordan, president of CCEA. Punched in the face, kicked in the stomach, staff and children threatened by students, sky-high blood pressure readings. I love being a teacher, but I don't think my health can suffer anymore. It isn't right when students' education is disrupted by the behavior of one or two students. I am actively looking for another career. I just can't do it anymore. I can retire during this school year, and I won't finish the school year. I never thought I would leave my students and colleagues during the school year. I always planned to finish the school year. Who do I talk to about leaving? I'm not going to another county. I'm just leaving teaching. These are the things I have heard in the past week from CCPS educators. Across the country, these same sentiments can be heard. However, across the country is not our problem. Carroll County is our problem. I wish any of us in this room could magically solve these problems, but we can't. But I do know we can't solve them until we acknowledge the problems exist. Educators at all levels are suffering, and I mean all levels. I'm talking administrators, everybody. I do hope that we can take a collaborative approach to making our situation better. There is no graceful way to transition from that topic to the holidays. So, happy holidays to all the students and staff of CCPS, and may the new year be better for all of us.
Thank you. At this time, Dr. Dorsey will read us about National Inclusive Schools.
Okay, last week, December 5th through 11th, was National Inclusive Schools Week. Carroll County Public Schools was recognized recently by the Ties Center as an excellent model for increasing inclusive opportunities for our students. Our school system continues to partner with the Maryland State Department of Education and the Ties Center to identify and remove barriers so that all students, including students with significant cognitive disabilities, are included in general education classes, lessons, activities, and routines. That's it.
Thank you. At this time, board members will talk about their activities and correspondence. Emily, we'll start to the left tonight.
On November 16th, I virtually attended a student discussion on school safety with Mr. Pierce. We touched on parking lots, threats, and drills, and I look forward to more conversation on these topics. Similar to other board members, I attended the delegation meeting on November 30th where we discussed Blueprint. Again, I look forward for more correspondence and cooperation with our delegation to effectively implement this new policy. As mentioned in Nikki's report, I attended CCSGA's December General Assembly. It was incredible to have our holiday spirit sparked again, as well as passing legislation and hosting workshops in person. It felt great just to get back to that tradition and work cooperatively with students across the county. I'm so grateful that we are back in person and involvement in student government is finally starting to grow again. On December 10th, I attended MASC's December Executive Board meeting alongside CCSGA staff. Here we reported on the events and progress of CCSGA, announced the release of Schwab applications alongside many other counties, and planned future opportunities for students regarding student leadership and a conference expected in May. With that being said, the application for Schwab is out. All freshmen and sophomores involved in SGA at their school level are welcome to apply. If you are interested in applying, please see your school SGA advisor or principal. Or you can, of course, reach out to me through my social medias, email, or through my website. I cannot speak highly enough of this opportunity. I am forever grateful for the connections I have made, lessons I've learned, and skills I have developed. There is seriously no other opportunity like this role, and I look forward to who will get to have this chance in the 2024-2025 school year. So please, please, please apply. We're really looking forward to all the different candidates we will have. Lastly, congratulations to Dr. Dorsey, Mrs. Battaglia, and Mr. Whistler. I look forward to what we will accomplish and getting to serve with you for the next 6 months. And thank you to Mr. Kyler for your service on the board and commitment through difficult decisions and challenges. And of course, happy holidays to all of our CCPS staff and students.
Thank you. Ms. Savigny?
Thank you. As we know, it's also the season of drama productions and holiday concerts at the schools. And in that vein, I did actually attend FSK's production of Midsummer Night's Dream a few weeks ago, and it was absolutely phenomenal. Kudos to that drama department. They were absolutely amazing. I don't think I could memorize that many lines of Shakespearean language. Just a phenomenal production, and kudos to them. Also attended the orchestra and band concerts at Westminster High School, which were fantastic. It's always fun watching the kids go through, learning their instruments at the elementary school level, and then seeing them progress to middle school. And that it was such a pleasure last week to go to the high school level, because it's really a step change from the middle school level. So it's great to see the kids that are sticking with it and really just putting together some pretty amazing performances. And thanks to all the drama teachers and the band and orchestra instructors out there, all the fine arts folks. They just do an amazing job, and it's kind of gotten everybody into the spirit of the season. So. I did also attend a Family Life Committee meeting last week, and I think I had reported at the last board meeting that the elementary subgroup had met to review changes that we potentially wanted to make to the health education framework. So the elementary level had met and decided on some changes, and then the full group of the Family Life Committee met last week. We had some additional changes after further discussion with the whole group that we wanted to make to that, so we don't have the recommendations for the board tonight. We'll be waiting until next month to present those so that we can put the finishing touches on all of the final recommendations. But did want to give everyone a heads up that we did distribute the approved minutes from the last meeting, and so those should have gone to all board members, so please let us know if you have any questions on that information. And last but not least, the delegation meeting that we had. I do want to thank Mr. O'Neill. I think that you led a very successful discussion and session, and several folks had aha moments during that meeting in terms of understanding really the implications of the blueprint formula and the funding. So I've had several follow-up conversations with delegates after that meeting, and some other topics have come up along the way that I'll probably be bringing up under new business this evening. And with that, I'll hand it over to Ms. Battaglia.
Thank you. So I attended the Ebb Valley Thanksgiving Fest. That was delicious. We did get an invitation for that, and I believe all central office is invited, and it's always nice that they have that opportunity for us to come and enjoy a delicious Thanksgiving feast. Also attended the Security Advisory Council meeting that day. We had the CAC meeting on November 15th. Again, good discussions. It was actually with members of our Security Advisory Council. I attended the May budget via Zoom, which is when we went over how much MABE is going to be spending on various things. Lots of good discussions and meeting other board members throughout the county. We had our delegation meeting here on November 30th. Again, very good discussions, and thank you to central office staff and Mr. O'Neill and Mr. Stockney for working with the delegation as well, explaining things to them. It's very important. I attended the Carroll County Commissioners swearing-in ceremony on December 5th, and I'd like to welcome Mr. Vigalotti, who is represented from District 1. Very, very happy to see you here, and I'm so happy that you are one of the county commissioners here. You're going to do incredible work for this county. I really do. You're very welcome. Well, thank you. And I'm moving on to that. I was here on December 7th for the swearing-in ceremony for myself, Dr. Dorsey, and for Mr. Whistler. Attended the Breakfast with Santa at the Career and Technology Center that benefits Skills USA. Again, another amazing meal that is done over there at the Career and Technology Center. And I got to take all three of my children this time, and it was a nice time, and it's a benefit, great meal, and it's a great benefit. So thank you guys for everything that you do over there. Upcoming events, we're going to be here on December 21st for the budget work session. Please make sure to visit various holiday lights that are around the county. Personally, I liked over at Local Homestead. That was an incredible night the other night. A little muddy, but it was all right. It was nice, and the lights are gorgeous, and it's always a good time. This weekend, Hackney Haunts will be open this weekend only, and it is a haunted holiday theme. So fair warning, it is haunted themed, but it is in the spirit of the holidays. And then again, that benefits some areas in the county. A little bit later, I'm going to be addressing some of the concerns I had just heard regarding bullying and discipline issues and accountability we're having in our schools. So I do want to let you know that those things, I actually have a proposal to discuss. So thank you guys for bringing that information up, and then we do need to work on those. Thanks.
Thank you. Dr. Dorsey?
I participated in the following activities since our last meeting. On November 10th, I was a part of the MABE Conference Program Committee meeting, and during that time, we debriefed the 2022 annual conference, and we also looked at the planning process that was used throughout the year so that we could plan a meaningful conference for all of the school board members throughout the state. On November 16th, I participated in the mock job interviews for Carroll County Career and Technology students. I served as one of the interviewers, and this whole situation provided an opportunity for students to participate in real-world interviews so that they could demonstrate effective interviewing techniques. And I must say that the students were quite impressive. They demonstrated skill in discussing their craft and engaging in the interviews. So I thank Sarah Jones, the Career Connections Coordinator for the Carroll County Career and Technology Center, for inviting me to participate in the mock job interviews. And I also have received several thank yous from the students that I interviewed, so I thank them for their thank yous because, again, they were just very touching. On November 18th, it was a busy day, but I participated briefly in the Curriculum Council meeting at Carroll Community College. I attended briefly before moving on to a community commitment. The topics that were presented at the Curriculum Council meeting were second step and sources of strength. So I thank Mr. Wernick and his staff for the presentations to the council, and I apologize that I had another commitment to go out for. Later on that day, after going to my commitment, I was able to attend the Equity Council meeting, and here we discussed support of the equity liaisons and the role of the Equity Action Plan. And I really thank Ms. Laura Dolan for chairing our council meetings in the absence of an equity and inclusion officer. And I thank all of the community members and staff who participated in that meeting. On November 19th, I was a part of the MABE Officers and Board of Directors Annual Retreat. Our agenda items for the full-day retreat was to review the roles and responsibilities of the MABE board members, committees, and staff. We also approved 2 to 3 areas of focus in the MABE work plan for the upcoming year. And finally, we discussed the important changes that are going to be facing MABE in the upcoming year. One change is going to be the hiring of a new executive director because Mrs. Francie Glendenning is going to be retiring in July 2023. So we've set a timeline so that we can have the finalists for the position interviewed by the Board of Directors, hopefully by early May. On November 30th, I also attended the joint meeting with the county state delegation on the overview of funding for the blueprint. And again, kudos to Mr. O'Neill and those who participated in sharing that information. And finally, on December 7th, I attended and participated in the swearing-in ceremony for the new board members. And I'd certainly like to thank Superintendent McCabe and staff, our families and friends for making it a wonderful ceremony and celebration. And finally, I would like to add my wishes as well to all of our staff and students and community members for a peaceful, happy, and safe holiday season. And hopefully we'll get rejuvenated and can be ready to start back up in January.
Thank you. And Mr. Whistler?
Thank you so much. Again, I really appreciate the warm welcome by staff and by so many people around the county. I will do my best to not let you down. My activities, I was very pleased to receive an invitation from the Boys and Girls Club of Westminster. I toured their facility on November 15th. I'm so very impressed with what that facility does for after-school programs for our children. I'm just so happy that we have organizations like the Boys and Girls Club and so many others that help our children after school. I think many of a few PTAs invited me to their meetings. On November 17th, West Middle PTA asked me to attend, and I was very happy to attend their meeting. November 21st, Oklahoma Road Middle School was there at their meeting. And then on actually November, I think 15th, or I may have the date wrong, but I attended Northwest Middle School's PTA meeting as well. So I appreciate those PTA presidents reaching out and asking me to get involved. I was incredibly proud of the number of teachers that I saw at these meetings. And so I know our teachers, as a former teacher myself, put in such long days at school, and to see the devotion they have to help our parents after school is so appreciated. I really appreciate their efforts. I'm happy to report that I will assume Mr. Kyler's school ambassador roles for several schools, including Hampstead Elementary, Linton Springs Elementary, Mechanicsville Elementary, Winfield Elementary, West Middle, FSK High School, and Carroll Springs School. So I look forward to being the board ambassador to those schools and working with those schools to help make sure that we focus on academics and give our kids the very best that they can. On December 5th, I was happy to attend the Board of Commissioners swearing-in ceremony. Again, Commissioner Vigliotti, thank you for attending. It's so good to see you and others representing us at the Board of Commissioners level, and we will need to rely on you heavily as we go forward throughout the year. Also here on December 7th for the swearing-in ceremony. Thank you so much, Superintendent McCabe, for extending me an invitation to attend the delegation meeting on November 30th. I was so appreciative to have insight as to how Blueprint will affect our school system, and our staff has a monumental task ahead to make sure that we meet those challenges, and I welcome the additional funding from the state and all of those great opportunities that it presents our students and teachers moving forward. And then I also want to give a shout out to our Century High School Marching Knights. As a band member when I was in high school, loved marching, and I'm so glad, and again, I used to live in Hawaii, and it was so glad to see them represent our state, our county, in the Pearl Harbor Memorial Parade on Oahu in Hawaii. So thank you so much to our marching knights, and hopefully they're bringing back the spirit of aloha. And again, just thank you so much for their hard work, their efforts, and I appreciate the community for donating so much money to help that happen. It is really appreciative to see the community come together for our marching knights. And then finally, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and Happy New Year, everybody. I hope everyone has a relaxing and joyous and an enjoyable holiday. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, congratulations to all four of you. And Mr. Vigliotti, we go way back, and send the money. Okay. Yes, please. I've been out and about, and I visited schools, and I am going to do a kudos to South Carroll. It was amazing. Their faculty was dressed professionally. Their students were dressed correctly. Looks like they were following the guidelines. I did not see pajamas and head ornaments. And I was in a class, and a young man came in, and this young man was in for an interview with a suit and a tie, and he had a wool hat on. And the teacher asked him to remove his hat. Did it without anything. I did not see a cell phone at South Carroll. So I just want to thank all of those that are working there really, really hard to continue with our policies and for the professionalism of that staff. That really stood out. Went to concerts. I have not seen Manchester Valley High School that full for a concert for North Carroll Middle. I thought they were all spreading the germs. I stood in the back, but it was excellent. And Mr. Peters did a really, really good job. And of course, I've seen other ones, but I just wanted to say that. The swearing in here was so nice, led by Ms. McCabe, and everyone's speeches were so nice. They were heartfelt and really talked about their family and the support they had from everyone through the election. But I'm going to do something totally different tonight. Kenny Parker. Some of you do not know Kenny Parker. Some of you should have learned to know Kenny Parker. Kenny Parker was a mainstay at South Carroll High School. He was their head football coach, and he started in 67. Mr. Parker and I worked together from 73 to 77 when I was there. What a mentor. He was the head football coach. He taught phys ed. and he always was exercising. I cannot count how many times he won a championship, whether tri-state, and that dates us because it was back with Maryland and West Virginia, and then also the CMC. He retired in 1996. But Mr. Parker was more than a phys ed teacher. He was more than a coach. He was a mentor. And I saw that from my own brother-in-law, Joe McCullough, Joe Foltz, Gene Brown, and that was his greatest attribute. He was still exercising several months ago with his cancer. He had a full set gym in his basement, but people would still go visit him, talk to him, and rely on him. But I just want to tell you, this is an individual that Carroll County Public Schools really admired and appreciated every day for everything he had done for Carroll County Public Schools and our students. And his wife, Nancy, was the English teacher there. And back in the 70s, Earl Hirsch, and I'm bringing up another name, supervisor of athletics in high schools, phys ed, had a flat top. So did Kenny Parker. Nancy Parker would come down to the girls' locker room and say, look, we have got to get Kenny a new hairdo. She goes, I don't care what you do, but we've got to get rid of the flat top. So I was there for 3 years, but when I left, Kenny Parker did not have a flat top anymore. So I just wanted people to be aware of what a wonderful person and what a wonderful mentor he was with so many men and women in Carroll County and in the state of Maryland and in West Virginia. So I just wanted, for people who didn't know him, I wanted you just to get a little bit of how important teachers are, educators are in Carroll County, because he touched so many lives. And Kenny, I can't thank you enough. And I think he was 91, and I think Nancy's like 90, 91 also. So my heart goes out to Nancy, but a life well lived. So, and the next thing is, I just want to wish everyone a happy holiday and enjoy your time with your families and friends. Okay, Dr. Man, it is Miss McCabe's time for superintendent's report.
I'll begin my remarks this evening on a sad note. Over the past few weeks, we have lost two of our former Board of Education members. Cynthia Foley passed away on November 19th. She served 2 terms on the board from 2004 through 2012. She spent 1 year as vice president and 1 year as president of the board. Also, Edward Lippy passed away on December 3rd. He was a member of the board from 1971 through 1990, and at that time was the longest-serving board member, as well as the longest-serving elected official in the state of Maryland. During his tenure on the board, he served 5 years as vice president and 6 years as president. We greatly appreciate Mrs. Foley and Mr. Lippy for the many years they dedicated to serving our school system and the community, and we send our condolences to their family members at this difficult time. And now on to some more positive news. As Mr. Whistler mentioned earlier, I would like to congratulate the Century High School Knights Marching Band, who traveled to Honolulu last week to perform in the annual Pearl Harbor Day Parade. It was a tremendous honor for the band to have been selected to serve as the official ambassador for the state of Maryland for this event. I can only imagine the countless hours of work, planning, and coordination that went into making this trip possible. I would like to thank Marching Band Director Sarah Norris Workman, the Century Instrumental Music Boosters, and everyone who worked together to make this happen, and of course, our very talented students for sharing their talent. I also would like to thank all those in the community who generously made donations toward the cost of the trip. I also would like to congratulate Mike Schweinsberg, welding teacher at the Carroll County Career and Technology Center. Mike has been selected as one of 3 finalists for 2023 for the Craft Instructor of the Year by Associated Builders and Contractors. This award is presented to an instructor who possesses outstanding creativity, a positive attitude, and the ability to transfer knowledge through communication skills and innovative teaching to promote lifelong learning to the future construction workforce. Mike teaches the core and Welding 1 curriculum with tremendous success. He is industry-driven and knows what is needed for students to succeed, not just in the shop and classroom, but in the workforce. He is very involved in the Skills USA welding competitions and is the first to volunteer for fundraisers, after-school activities, and events. He was recently assigned as one of the 7 school leadership team members and heads the Social Wellness Student Culture Committee. All 3 finalists will be featured in an upcoming issue of Construction Executive Magazine and in ABC's weekly e-newsletter. The recipient will be announced at the ABC convention in March. Good luck, Mike. And finally this evening, as I wish everyone a happy holiday, I will also say that tomorrow will be the first inclement weather event we will have, and our students will be very happy to know that I'm announcing right now from the dais that we're going to start tomorrow on a 2-hour delay with a reevaluation in the morning. We will be pushing this information out this evening through all of our communication outlets.
You've made the
Thank
bus
you.
drivers happy. You made people, you made the teachers happy. Yes, yes. Yes. All right. Well, thank you, Ms. McCabe. Now, at this time, we will be having a presentation for acceptance and enrollment process for Career and Technology Center programs at this time.
Board members had expressed interest in learning more about the enrollment process for the Career and Technology Center. Mr. Wernick, Mr. Eccles, and Ms. Donovan are here to provide details on the process and entertain discussion from the board. Mr. Wernick?
Good evening, everyone. I don't know if I can top our presentation with a 2-hour delay, you know? Good evening, board members, Superintendent McCabe, and Commissioner Vigliotti. We are excited to present information about career and technology, the acceptance and enrollment process. But I first wanted to introduce again Mr. Bill Eccles, who is the supervisor of career and technology education, as well as Ms. Betsy Donovan, principal of the Career and Technology Center. They are going to continue through the presentation and discuss several topics of kind of where we are as an overview, where we've been, and kind of where we're going as we continue through our journey through the Career and Technology Education Center.
And we may or may not have the presentation up on screen, but... To your right, no, it's over there. Okay. I don't get to see it. That's all right. I know a little bit about it. All right, so... we're going to provide an overview of the process by which students are accepted and enrolled into the Career and Technology Center. And we want to start with a little bit of background. And so, as you may know, the Career and Technology Center opened in 1971 with 325 students. Just before COVID, there were over 1,400 students in the center. So we've had tremendous growth, and we've had to adjust our offerings based on new technologies, new student interests, and new possibilities within the programs. All right. Are we good now?
I don't think so.
That's all right.
So just ask them too.
Okay. We'll make something happen. All right, but this, if you can see the chart there, it goes up. So one of the things that we've done over the years is had a mix of programs both at the Career and Technology Center and at the high schools. And so our CTE offerings are not just the programs at the Career and Technology Center, but we've had programming always in the home high schools for students to take advantage of. And so
Mr. Eccles, could I ask a quick question
You
about
can.
those programs that have been transitioned out of the Career and Tech Center into the home high schools? They don't follow any type of similar enrollment process as the Career and Tech Center does, do they? Or
It depends on the program. So largely not. So like our ag programs, which never were at the Career and Technology Center. They've always been at the home high schools, but it is a CTE completed program. Those the students would schedule as they would any other class. But we've had discussions back and forth of whether we should have a more specific application process, because one of the things we run into is students don't always see them as a program. They see them as individual classes, right? And so part of the advantage of what happens at the Tech Center is that students see the whole sequence because it's presented as a package. And so you're not taking just the first engineering class. You're taking the whole engineering program. Whereas we have many students who sign up for principles of business but don't do the whole business completer. So to answer your question, no, they don't all have an application. Many of the high school programs, the students sign up class by class in the regular scheduling process. Right. All right. So on screen we have the programs that are offered at the high schools. And so we have our agri-science classes, business, computer science, new one, digital fabrication, interactive media production, our child development and early education. We've offered that for many years, but as we've talked, we're transitioning that to a new model with the CDA certification available, and Maryland Youth Apprenticeship Program, which we are working to build. In addition to those that are at each high school, we have regional programs. We have our Academy of Finance program, which is at Century High School and Westminster High School, although it's available to students from all high schools. And that follows an application process similar to the Tech Center. And then we also have our JROTC, which is at Century High School and Winters Mill High School. And those are also available to students from all schools. All right. So at the Tech Center, we started with 17 programs, I believe, in 1971. We're up to 30 programs now, and many of those programs have multiple sections. So I want to really emphasize that as student interest has grown, as student population has grown, we've really tried to adjust the offerings to meet the needs of our students and also the needs of the industry. So we have, I'm not going to go through the whole list, but we have quite a lot going on, and it ranges from programs that were available in 1971, like our auto service program, and programs that we've just started recently. So, we're constantly adding programs, adjusting, removing programs that are no longer of interest or that we can't get student enrollment for, and making sure that we are giving the broadest offering that we were able to. Sure.
Battaglia?
What type of future programs are we looking at right now? And I know there's been discussion every year about plumbing, and I know that's something we have to wait till the rest of the Tech Center is completed as modernization.
Right.
But what were some of the other programs that were potentially coming down the pipeline?
So we are working to address plumbing through our apprenticeship program, even though we don't have a shop available now to run it at the Tech Center. But that doesn't mean we won't connect students with a career in plumbing, because it's good and important. But we are looking at offering hospitality and tourism. We are looking at adding a ag mechanics or a small engine repair course. We're talking with the college about the possibilities of maybe a drone program. So we have a couple that are kind of like the near future, and then long term, we're looking at, but we're not ready to dive into things like electric vehicles, autonomous robots, and some of those new technologies that are coming at us. They're going to have self-driving Tesla semi-trucks on the road. There's already one, but there's going to be more, and so we're going to need mechanics for those. So those things are in our future, but we're not ready now to open a program in them.
It's good to hear. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, Mr. Whistler.
I appreciate the presentation. I'm just curious about how many of those that you've listed have some sort of agreement or relationship with area businesses for internship opportunities? Can you give me like a percentage, like half of
Well,
them?
so 100% of our programs have a relationship with local businesses. It's a requirement of us from the state, and it's also just a very good practical idea, that each program area has a connection to our local industry partners. So Mr. Swinesberg, who was just mentioned, we just recently had his advisory committee meeting, and so he brought in several of his employers that hire interns and work with us, and had a meeting to discuss what are the needs of the industry, what are the needs of our students, and make those connections. So in each of our programs, we have at least 2 meetings a year with those industry partners. Now, every company that comes onto the advisory committee does not necessarily hire interns, but they have a connection, they provide information to us. And then we have many more companies than are on our advisory committees that do take interns. And so we put out a great number. Ms. Sarah Jones keeps quite busy finding placements for our students who have finished their programs and are moving on to internship.
Okay.
I'll let you play with that.
My turn.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Nope, too far. Can you control it, please? So the way in which we share the information about what's going on at the Tech Center, all the programs we have, are we start with our website. All the information on all the programs, on the instructors is on our website. Every October, we host an open house. Every 8th grader in CCPS visits the Tech Center, and they're exposed to 4 different programs during their visit. Our school counselors go to the home high schools and present to every 9th grade class. They also offer after-school tours for 9th and 10th grade students as well as their parents. And then every single 10th grader is sent an email with instructions on how to apply to the Tech Center.
Next slide, please.
So the actual application process, it is an online application. Students
You have a printed copy of it in your packet, I believe.
Students have the opportunity of listing 2 programs, their first and their second choice. And then every student who applies, acceptance is based on a rubric score, which we'll get into, and every single applicant receives word of whether they were accepted or they were placed on a wait list.
Ms. Battaglia, you had a question.
I think I've talked about this before. Along with applying online, is there a way that we can incorporate some type of 2-sentence essay, a small paragraph as to why they feel they should be in the course that they would like? And the reason why I ask is because it's something I continue to hear every year. You know, my student meets the requirements and they were put on a wait list. And then I hear from another parent, well, my kid doesn't even really want to do that when they get out of high school. They're just using this as a step to get into college. So I think we need to make sure that we are reaching the students that want to use these paths, that, you know, this is something they want to do with their future. They're not just using it as it looks good on a college app. You know, is there a way that we can do that? And also, is there a way for parents and students to know where they are on a wait list? Because that was another thing I hear, well, where's my kid on the wait list? Like, is this something I could kind of like, okay, or just hold on, you might get it, or is it, no, let's look at another opportunity? Because these are some of the concerns we do hear in the community from parents and from students. So I just wanted to see how that was working on.
Pre-COVID, and back when we had a paper application process, we did have students write a paragraph on the back expressing their interest, and we have now not done that for a couple of years, but we certainly could look at a way to incorporate that interest level in there.
Okay.
So one of the reasons we stepped away from it was we had students who became very stressed out about having to write an essay, which was not really the point of the activity. So we would want to make sure that we're not putting a burden on students to make it harder to apply, with however we would address that concern.
And I think it's also good to, it's, way to look at it is we're preparing them for the real world. You know, they would have to do this probably for a college application, job application, you know. It's kind of like a pre-interview in a sense. So I think that's another good way to look at it. And also, back to my one question about where parents are on the, where students are on the wait list. Are students being talked to about another program that they could potentially be part of, or one that it doesn't have a wait list and there's openings for?
So going back to the question of, you know, is it part of what they're looking at in their future career plans? It could also be maybe a checkbox, since it's an online application, that this is, you know, a career that I'm looking at for future, for either a future occupation or for furthering my, my education in, if it's not a paragraph. So we'll look at both of those, as well as, our students have a selection of either the first or second choice. So if they don't get their first, they may have their selection. So that may answer your second question as well. And then we'll continue to discuss, where they may be on the wait list and provide that to our families.
So the counselors do spend quite a bit of time making sure students understand connection. So if we have a student that's interested in the engineering field, but perhaps they didn't get accepted into the project Lead the Way engineering, they would be advised that we have applied mechanical engineering, we have drafting, and we have digital fabrication that would all lead a student to that similar career path. So we've worked very hard to make sure that we don't have just one opportunity for students. We like to have multiple pathways so that if they have an interest, there's a couple ways they can go about it.
Emily? So a few quick points. Additionally to checkbox, you could also include with an essay so it's not overwhelming. I agree, you don't want to deter students from applying. You can make the essay optional or put a word count limit on it or character count. That would always make it shorter. So students can highlight how badly they want to get into the program and to what extent they see themselves in that career field. But additionally, I saw on the rubric it refers to the contact information of the student's guidance counselor. In an essay, students would tend to highlight what extracurriculars they're involved in, what accomplishments they have. Do guidance counselors send that information in? Is that in addition to the rubric? I didn't see it on the rubric, so I assumed guidance counselor was purely communication, but is extracurriculars, do they send in, here's all these clubs that the students involved in, they're a varsity athlete, et cetera?
That's probably a good transition to looking at the actual rubric.
Yes.
Next slide, please.
Yeah.
Next slide, please.
So this is the rubric, and we use a student's transcript because it is the metrics that is common to all students. Every CCPS student has a transcript. Not every CCPS student is an athlete, but they do have grades, they do have core courses. So the grade part is based on core courses. So your English, your math, your science, your social studies. Again, every CCPS student has to take those courses. And then their attendance rate. So every student has an attendance rate. They're given a score for each category, and the higher the score, the higher their overall rubric score is. Now, the rubric score in and of itself per student doesn't mean much. It's when we have all the scores, and we rank the scores highest to lowest. There's no, you have to have 15 points to get into welding. That's not how it works. It's the highest scores. The first 22 available seats are offered to those scores, those students who have the highest scores, and then we move from there. Not every student accepts the seat they're offered, which allows us to go to the wait list. Once we go to the wait list, those scores are reevaluated because students can improve their attendance. They can improve their grades and the rigor of their courses. So, Ms. Battaglia, to go back to your wait list, to tell a parent, excuse me, right now your child's number 3 on the wait list. In 4 weeks, they may not be number 3. So it's that ebb and flow. A student could improve tremendously in 4 weeks. They could also bomb terribly in 4 weeks. So the wait list fluctuates.
And so it's a whole process, when the counselors first look at the rubrics, and so we calculate all the rubrics, and then the student who has that highest rubric score, we look at what their first choice is, right? And then we look at the second highest rubric score and what their first choice is. So we don't go like the welding class and who is the highest. It goes by the highest scored student, what is their first choice, and then the second highest scored and the third highest scored. And so we fill programs as student interest arrives. And then if you get down to a student whose first choice is not available, then we put that student's second choice in, right? And so you keep working down. So I think a lot of people have the idea that, we fill the welding class and then we fill the Cosmo class, but that's not how it works. We look at the highest scored students and what their interest is and fill down as we go. And so you end up with, at that first look through after we do the December 1st cutoff, a lot of information that's being processed in a pretty quick amount of time by the counselors to get those students placed.
Commissioner Vigliotti. Yes. Your turn. Yep, just keep putting your cards up, and then I'll pick you up.
Thank you very much. So I may have missed this, and forgive me if I did, but hearing all of the discussion about the rubric and the scoring and it seems like it's a very objective way of putting students into a program that they might be interested in. So I guess my question is, and again, forgive me if I missed this part of the answer, and going back to Mrs. Battaglia's point, how does a student's subjective interest get conveyed to those analyzing the rubric, and how does that end up affecting the decision? So, for example, I may not be a genius at math, and I may have horrible grades in math classes, but I love framing walls. I love putting up sheetrock. I love doing something technical with my hands that may not necessarily be reflected in my academic grades.
That's a good question. Thank you.
So we are required to look at things that are level across the field. So we have to be careful that we don't either overrepresent or underrepresent a student based on our own biases, right? And so we need to make sure that we're looking at metrics that are common and available to all students. And so when you get into that desire to be in a program, I'm not sure how you measure that. And so in that case, their desire to be in the program, they've applied for the program, and so that's a consideration. But as far as who has that desire more, I don't know how to measure that.
Well,
Okay,
I was
go
going to say, with respect to what our student representative had suggested earlier, perhaps that could be part of what the essay is about, to demonstrate a personal willingness or passion. I mean, I don't know what you require that goes into this essay, but if it is to be made optional or if it is to be set to a limit, allowing students to express why they want to be a part of any particular program, that might fall under the inclusiveness of the essay.
Thank you.
I would put a caution out there. Reading 1,200 essays is going to take quite a lot of manpower time, right? So one of the things that we have to consider, there are 2 counselors at the Career and Technology Center. Acceptance and enrollment is not the entirety of their job, right? So if we make the process too burdensome on our staff, then we will struggle to meet the needs of the student. So not that that idea is wrong, but I just want to put that out there that we don't have unlimited staff hours to work on this process.
Ms. Savigny.
And thank you for that, Mr. Eccles. One of the things that I wanted to point out is when we did some career and tech analysis way back when we were trying to figure out, okay, what are the needs for the new building design and the programs and everything, we had talked about how full some of the programs were and how full some of programs were not, as well as having the partnership that we did with Littlestown, right, where we brought some of those kids down. And I know that there was a bit of an outcry from the community saying, how can you do this? How can you give opportunities to kids outside the county before giving them to kids inside the county? And I think one of the key things to understand is that many of our trade programs are not full, right? We're not denying spots. It's the top 5 or 6 programs we're like Cisco networking and Project Lead the Way engineering and biomedical and homeland security. Like those were the top ones, and those are the very competitive programs where, you know, your grades were the number one criteria to kind of get you into those. But a lot of the trade programs are not full, and they're not even full today, right? Like we're not necessarily turning any kids away from certain of the trades programs. Is that still true?
There's an ebb and flow with that as well. For
Okay.
instance, welding, we could hire a second teacher and offer a second welding program
Okay.
because that program is so full. But yes, there are some programs that don't have an extensive wait list, but there is ebb and flow with that as well.
Okay. And I know that, you know, with the new building and everything, as those programs are getting phased in, you know, we can accept, I think, a lot more kids, but that will require additional teachers in some cases. And those are some of the things that we'd really like to see. Like, I would like to see as a board member, as part of our budgeting process every year, like, okay, we now have overflow in the welding program, and it would really behoove us to have another teacher there. I think that's a significant opportunity that we want to be able to evaluate at the board level to say, no, we need the dollars to have the plumbing program, or, you know, if we can make that happen, or the welding, you know, a second session of the welding program, things like that.
And we have done that over the years. So we have 6 teachers now in Academy of Health, because we kept having student interest. So we kept offering more sections or finding different opportunities for the students. We've been creative with the schedule so we can maximize teacher time and get more students in. So we do work within the staffing that's available to us to try to get as many students put into programs as possible. And so you'll see, if you look back over time, programs that had lower enrollment and that we had less student interest, we closed those programs or we moved them back to the high schools, and programs that had higher student interest, then we've expanded those. So we do try to do that within the constraints of staffing.
Right. I think that it would be helpful if occasionally we could see, you know, here are the number of kids that applied for each of the programs and how many were potentially turned away, right, or something like that. Just to kind of understand some of that ebb and flow, and whether, you know, because Commissioner Vigliotti, I agree with your comments, and I know Mr. Weaver had made similar comments in the past. Like some of those kids are the ones who really need those programs the most, and, you know, it would really behoove them to learn a trade. And so we don't want to be turning them away. But we just need to understand, okay, where are the situations where we're potentially turning kids away
And
from the
so
program?
I'll bring up again our apprenticeship opportunities. We need to get our local business partners to sign up to be apprenticeship hosts, because then we make the connection with the student and a business, and they can learn on the job if we don't have a program for them. So encourage your business friends.
All right, Mr. Whistler, please.
Yeah, again, I really appreciate your presentation, and I just had some questions. I was wondering if there was any flexibility built in the process, for example, waivers. So one of the key components of your rubric is attendance. My concern is maybe for that student that's going through a homelessness situation or a divorce, where maybe they have a huge spike in attendance issues. Is there something in place to look at attendance maybe holistically rather than in a small window? And then my second question relates to what kind of input do our educators have to determine who was selected for these programs? Is it just the grades they give, or can we incorporate some sort of effort to help receive valuable input from our educators? Maybe a committee of people that help the counselors select folks. But I would like to see some sort of, you know, educator input to those that we select into the program, if that's possible.
So as the rubric stands, there is not, other than the grades have been assigned by other educators, but there is not a committee as such. And so I think that has potential for wonderful conversations. I would throw out there again that we're talking about 1,200 applications.
Right.
Yes. No, and I understand where you're coming from, and I think it's a good idea, but we have to balance the actual getting through the process with.
Right, and then also the just to decrease the rigidness of the requirements, especially with attendance. Again, I'm really concerned. People go through divorce. People have periods of homelessness. I'm really concerned about the heavy emphasis on attendance. I understand why, I get it. But I just don't want to see a child whose parents are going through a divorce at the 10th grade or 11th grade level miss out on an opportunity when it's just a bump in the road, and then, you know, their attendance can get back on track later. But that's just a concern I have.
And that 94% minimum requirement doesn't mean if you don't hit the 94, you have no chance of getting in.
No, and I think that's an important point, is that we routinely enroll students who have attendance or GPA below that minimum, right? So especially when we were talking about some of these programs that have lower interest and not as many applications, we're not turning students away and leaving a seat empty. Our goal is to fill all the seats. And so, you know, it's in programs where we have a lot of student interest and then it becomes more highly competitive. And then we would, you know, advise students based on their interest what some other opportunities we have for them. So we don't just tell any student, sorry about your luck, off you go. You know, we work with them to say, here's some other possibilities, or maybe you should add this as a second choice on your application. So we go back through and look at all those students and offer, here's a program at the homeschool. Here's something we have in connection with the community college in a dual enrollment situation that would get you towards the career that you're going. So the rubric is the starting point, but the conversations, what that allows us to do is place a great number of students, and then we get down to a much smaller group that needs additional attention, needs those conversations, need to talk to the school counselors, and then we can focus on those students and, you know, figure out what's a good path for them.
Emily, I do want to say one thing first about attendance, because I've seen many students go over there, but there are exceptions, and I understand that. But also, people want to get into that program, and if we're going to have them career and college ready, you need to have good attendance, because of the fact that once you get out of career and tech, or if you graduate, you know, you need to be responsible. You need to be a responsible citizen, and you need to have good attendance at work. And I know there are extenuating circumstances, but if they have bad attendance, then that's going to knock some other student out that really wanted to get in there, that had really good attendance. And they might have great grades. But I think you guys do the best you can. But attendance is very important, just period. You need to be there so you learn. And I know some of these students have terrible home lives, and that's the only thing they have, and they do want to come to school because there's nothing else in their life. But that attendance is very, very, very important. Emily.
Another solution to the issue of the essay and trying to quantify that data, you could make a rank scale on a scale of 1 to 10. How interested are you in this career field? 1 being I do not plan on seeking a career in this field, and then a 10 being I absolutely am certain I'm going to pursue this career. And then additionally, that way it's easy to read through, and you know, if the question of, well, is somebody just saying that just to get into the program? You could say the same thing about an essay. So also, are both excused and unexcused absences counted within that attendance, or is it only unexcused?
No, it is, it's all attendance.
It's all attendance. And what about late versus early dismissal? Are those accounted for as well, or is it just whole day absences?
It's whole day absences.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Battaglia?
Is behavior also considered part of the rubric? So like, let's say we have a student who's consistently like bad behavior, or they're in the office, they have lunch detention or in-school suspension or anything of that magnitude. Is some of that also portrayed in some of?
No, it's not its own line item. Now, a student that is being consistently out of class due to their disciplinary issues, it's going to impact their grades, and suspensions would impact their attendance, but it's not its own line item.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other questions?
Very good. Thank you
All right. Thank you so much. We really appreciate that, because we really needed to see this process. Thank you. And this time, we will move on to reports, and our first one is school construction report. Ms. McCabe?
So we have our monthly construction report, and Mr. Marks is available for any questions or comments you may have.
Okay, guess what? It's Miss Savigny time.
Well, Mr. Marks came down. We have
I
to
know,
ask
I
him
know.
at
You
least
gotta
one
ask him something.
question, right?
And if I miss you, just keep your cards propped up so that I don't, keep you in order. Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Marks.
Hello.
How are you?
Doing great. Just got a phone call from Miss Gaddis.
I think we all
my
did.
phone was
Thank
buzzing
you.
as well to
Luckily,
tell
I had
us
my phone-
school is starting
We're all
2
like-
hours late tomorrow.
Yeah,
So-
Luckily, I had it on mute. It was good.
Gotcha. Right.
Mr. Whistler.
So just kind of in connection with the discussion that we just had on career and tech, where you're giving us, regular updates on the improvements to the Career and Tech Center. Can you just refresh our memory? So we've moved into phase 3.
Phase 2.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Phase 2. We're working on phase 3 now.
Right, we just started on phase 3, right?
Correct,
Right.
correct.
So what are the programs that are most impacted by phase 3?
By phase 3, well, the phase 3 programs are masonry, carpentry, but they're learning in their existing areas.
Right.
Right. So everybody's learning in a suitable area. Some of the impacted areas might be in the 87 edition, if that's what you're regarding, where that's welding, HVAC, and heavy equipment. They're all the way at the end of the building, so it's hard to bring the students safely back and forth through construction.
Right.
So we've made them go outside and around the building and back in when they need to come to lunch and, see a counselor or whatever. But it's a tough part of a job when you're doing a phase occupied renovation like this.
Right.
So
Right.
but-
Yeah, so folks are mostly learning in their new homes.
Correct.
But their old homes are being renovated now, and they might be moved back.
Correct.
To some of
Correct.
those.
Phase
Okay.
1 took care of the majority with the 90,000 square foot addition in the front. And then now we're beginning that other puzzle movement of where those places that they vacated, to go into the new spaces, now we're renovating those. And then other programs move into those. So
Right.
it took a long time to plan this.
Right,
It was
right.
very tough.
Yeah, the phased approach is a little tough, and
Yes.
so we're still probably a little constrained on number of kids that we can accept into some of the programs, but that will increase once phase 3 is over. Is
Well,
that
it
correct?
stays the same. We've made sure that we have not impacted any class sizes at
Okay.
all. And this whole addition and renovation isn't taking care of population increases. It's taking care of the space they didn't have, right? Because you're in a building that was built for, I think they had, 358 students is what it's sized for.
Okay.
But that's when they were jammed in closets in very small areas to teach those areas.
Okay, so we're
so-
keeping the class sizes the same, it's
Correct.
just a much bigger, more appropriate space for them
Correct.
to
It's
be
giving them
working
the
in.
space they've asked for a long time. Yes, exactly.
All right, any other questions for Mr. Marks? Thank you very much, sir.
No problem. Thank you.
And next, we have Transportation Services Benchmark Report. Ms. McCabe.
Annually in December, we present the Transportation Services Benchmark Report, which contains the metrics we review internally to measure the efficiencies in our transportation system. It is worth noting that the pandemic has affected some of these metrics for the past 2 years. I'll ask Mr. Hardesty to present a few of the highlights in the report, and then he will be happy to respond to any questions and discussion.
Good evening, board members, Commissioner Vigliotti. Our transportation benchmarking report is presented to the board each December. It is an effort to take a look at the prior year's operations in transportation, and we compare that to the year prior to that and prior years to that. So we're trying to get a trend analysis of how we're performing year to year. We also compare our operations to statewide standards and national standards. As a contractor county that uses a reimbursement formula, we also compare ourselves to a total of 17 counties, including Carroll, that uses a reimbursement formula for operations. There we go. So this is just a fact sheet that compares last school year 2022, to the year prior to that. the 2021 school year. And we know the 2021 school year was our first full year of COVID, where very few students attended school until we got towards the middle and end of that school year. Very few buses were on the road that year. Although we did compensate contractors, with the exception of fuel, as if it were a normal school year. So you'll see that our cost of operations would be somewhat normal for a normal school year. But when we look at graphics such as cost per student, you're going to see that those graphs look quite strange because there were very few students that attended, especially in that 2021 school year. If we look at this snapshot of last school year, I think the thing that stands out the most, you'll see the operating budget. And by operating budget, we're talking about our expenditures with our school bus contractors. It does not include any administrative costs. So you'll see that the increase of $2.6 million was quite substantial. Most of that is due to the increases in the formula that the formula committee and the school board authorized. It also is influenced greatly by the fact that the cost of diesel last year had increased. It's even higher now, but there was a substantial increase in the average cost of diesel last year. And also, when we compare it to the prior year, which was the COVID year, we did not pay for fuel for buses that didn't run. So FY 2021 was actually an understated cost of operations compared to what a normal school year would be. As I said, some of the graphs are going to look rather strange. So when we have fewer students riding, then obviously our capacity utilization figures are very, very skewed. So we're heading back towards a normal year. I will say the number of students riding as of this current year, September, and ridership figures that you'll see in the charts, we gather from each September. So the 15,557 students that you see there was gathered from September of 2021 for that last year that's shown there. We are back up to almost pre-COVID numbers. Our latest ridership reports from this past September were nearly 19,000 students. So we're pretty much back to where we were as far as the number of students riding buses prior to COVID.
So, Mr. Hardesty, thanks for that caveat, because that was one of the first things that jumped out of this report at me was the 15,557. Like, obviously, 2021 was an anomaly year, yes. But I was thinking that we were running between, like 18 and 19,000 students every year prior to that, and it only bounced back to the 15,557. But that wasn't this past September.
No,
that was September 15 months ago.
That was September of 21.
Okay.
And it took a while for, students to start gradually getting back on buses. Mm-hmm. By the spring of 22, we had 17,000 and some students riding. And now by this past September, we're up to 19,000.
We are back up to the 19,000
We are back
level.
up to where we were pre-COVID, yes.
Okay, that's what I was wanting to understand, is whether we were all the way back to pre-COVID levels, or if there was any residual falling off, like of a new normal, so to speak.
No, we're seeing the numbers on our buses similar to what a normal school year looked like prior to COVID.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Yep. Obviously, the cost of the regular bus has increased substantially, again, due to the increases that the Formula Committee proposed and were implemented for the last year, and also the rising price of fuel. Also, the cost of a bus has gone up substantially also. A number of students transported for special needs. You'll see a dip here as well. One thing that is noteworthy here is prior years when we had more half-day pre-K programs, those students rode special needs buses midday. So most of the pre-K students are now in full-day programs, so it's a big drop in the number of students that actually ride special needs buses, especially midday.
So is that the primary driver of the drop from, the 750 level down to 500? That's the pre-K situation?
Well, that and COVID, of course, for the 2021 school year. But the number of students for last school year would dropped also, but that is primarily, yes, because of the pre-K. And you can see the cost of a special needs bus for both in-county and out-of-county is also substantially increased due to the formula. Not so much the length of the rides, but the formula itself. Again, you can see what the cost per student is obviously going to be tremendously increased with the fewer number of students that ride. Average cost per mile, and here you can get a snapshot look at what the price of diesel has done, what it did last year. The average for the entire year was $4.04. Again, we take a survey every 2 weeks. We do a survey of all the fueling stations across the county for diesel, a dozen fueling stations. We drop the high, drop the low, get the average. Do that every 2 weeks, and contractors are compensated on that revised rate every their pay every 2 weeks. So the average for the whole year was $4.04.
It'll be more this year.
The current average is over $5. It's about $5.30. Diesel, unfortunately, is not dropping the way regular unleaded has.
No, and then on top of that, you need DEF.
That's true.
That's
Yeah,
bad.
that is true.
Miss Savigny.
Yeah, so that's where I was going to go with that, is if we know that it's going to be over $5, I'm assuming, Mr. O'Neill, those adjustments are going to be shown as inflationary increases as part of the budget work session that we're going to see next week. Okay. Okay.
Thanks.
And here is the cost of the bus. This is a regular ed bus primarily that increased from $112,000 in the 2021 school year to the current $125,000, almost $126,000. So in addition to everything else, the price of the bus is going up. Our average daily miles, average daily hours, there's not much difference here. We're pretty steady across the years. Nothing substantial there. Again, the miles are paid miles. So for the 2021 school year, we didn't travel that many miles, but we paid that many miles. Number of certified drivers, you can see the graph unfortunately continues to go down the last couple years. There is some good news, however. I can tell you that a total of, let me get my figure here. We had a total of 59 applications since July 1, and there are 27 new drivers that have been certified since then. So we're hoping to increase that number, but that's a substantial increase for the period, especially the summer, than we've had in prior years. The chart on the right shows where we stand relative to the other counties that use a formula, and Carroll is a little bit less than the $27.20, and these are the figures that the counties pay the contractor per hour for the driver. These are not the salaries necessarily that the driver receives. As we pay an hourly salary, but it includes fringe benefits, the 20% increase over the hourly rate for the driver for fringe benefits. So we're a little bit less than the $27.20, but keep in mind that average is a little bit skewed by those 6 counties that are above the red line there. The other 11 counties are, lower than Carroll.
Mr. Whistler.
Thank you, Mr. Hartsey. As I told you last week, I used to be a bus driver. I was actually a driver for about 9 months while I was awaiting my teaching certification. So I noticed some of the counties are missing, particularly Baltimore County. Is that because does this chart include those counties that are county-owned bus systems, or are these counties the counties that do contracting?
Right. These counties are similar to Carroll in that they have a reimbursement formula. They're contractor-operated counties similar to Carroll.
Right.
Baltimore County, Prince George's, Montgomery, they're primarily public-owned systems. Frederick, public-owned systems, so you won't see them on this chart because we can't compare apples to apples.
I understand. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Although, just so you know, Baltimore County does have some contracted
They do.
county bus, and I'm just curious if it's ever worthwhile to include that, but I appreciate the clarification.
They do, but they acquire that service by bid, so it's a little bit different. The same with Howard. Howard has an entirely contract system, but their costs are determined by bid documents, bid rates. So this is the chart that compares Carroll with the other 16 counties that have a formula. And you'll see that Carroll is now the fourth highest, and this is the chart for this current school year. So this is the formula that's being used for a theoretical bus route that's 5 hours and 80 miles or 5 3/4 hours and 80 miles. And we plug in the new rates for this year as we do for the other 16 counties. And we get up a theoretical or approximate cost, not a theoretical, but approximate cost of what a bus will cost for those hours in time and those hours in miles, and then compare it to the others. So we are now fourth highest in the state, and I'm pleased to say that's a significant improvement over the prior year. We were eighth highest in prior years, so seventh or eighth highest. So we've made a substantial improvement in the contractor's compensation thanks to the board's approval of the reimbursement formula committee's recommendations.
And I will say that I was one of their cheerleaders because we needed to get those buses to school, and we did whatever, anything that we could possibly do to get them there. And I do really appreciate, everything they've done. But it's expensive.
Yes, it gets more expensive every year.
Yeah.
Like everything else. As far as safety, again, these figures are a little skewed, especially for school year 21, when we had very few buses on the road. But again, overall, we have, I think, a very good safety record. You'll see the number of accidents. Every accident is evaluated as to whether it's a preventable accident or a non-preventable accident. Very strict standards as far as preventability. So you can see the majority of the accidents that we review wind up being preventable. But our overall accident record, especially related to appreciable property damage or personal injury, is a very, very admirable record for 5.4 million miles traveled.
So if I was driving and I was driving and there was a branch there and broke my right side mirror, so that is a preventable accident.
Well, that may not be preventable, but that is an accident.
Yeah,
it has to be reported as an accident.
That was my point.
If a branch falls down and it's not foreseeable by the driver,
right,
then that will not
but
be
that's
preventable.
still an accident.
That's
still an accident.
That's in those statistics, yes.
I'll never forget Anna Mae Schaefer. Something happened with her, and she goes, "I've had a perfect driving record," and it was something really minuscule, but it was an accident. So I just wanted people to know that just a little thing like a broken side mirror is now an accident. So, do you have a question?
Yeah,
Ms. Vigny?
I was just curious. I mean, this is still a very commendable safety record. I mean, kudos to you and your team and the bus drivers and the contractors. They do an amazing job.
The bus drivers and the contractors, yes.
Yeah, they do an amazing job. Just curious that there is a blip, like you said, in 2022. Is there anything there that's concerning to us, or any trends of things that we need to worry about?
No, not really. Again, we started out the 21-22 school year slowly as far as number of students, number of buses, and that kind of thing. So it just was a very good year for us, quite honestly, to only have that. We had 71 total accidents, so when you compare that to some of the prior years, we're pretty much back up to what you might call an average year for accidents.
Right.
But as far as the number of serious accidents, that was pretty low.
Right.
Yeah.
Very
And
low.
we thank them.
Very low.
Yes. Every year's different, though.
Oh,
We knock on wood when we
it
talk
is.
about accidents.
Tomorrow might be a little icy and everybody will stay home.
So we want to certainly acknowledge and thank Sheriff DeWeese and his staff for their involvement and support of the Stop on Camera program. But this gives you an idea of how many violations we're seeing since the program was implemented. The only good news I would say is if you look at October, November of 22 and compare to October, November of 21, you see a decline there. So we're hopeful that the cameras are having a positive effect in changing behavior of motorists, but we're still averaging about 30 to 35 violations every school day.
Mr. Taglia?
I was going to say, I see a lot of times on social media, parents like, am I supposed to stop or not? Like, what's the protocol? And I always sit there, within doubt, stop.
Yes.
Like if it's, on the other side of the road and it's a 4-lane highway and there's a median and, they're on the shoulder, guess what? I'm going to stop because I'm not going to take the chance. So that's why I always tell everybody, if you're in doubt of it, just stop. Just go ahead and stop, and that way they won't take your pretty picture.
The law says 20 feet in any direction approaching a school bus with its red flashing lights on.
Yep.
And of course, the bus is using its amber lights at least 100 feet, amber flashing lights at least 100 feet before the bus stop. So we expect motorists to use those yellow lights as a notice that you're going to have to stop here pretty quick.
Yep.
But it's a very serious matter, and we just feel like the cameras are certainly doing something to help address that problem.
Absolutely. When I went to Sheriff Dewey's, I think it was 6 years ago, and I had briefly discussed this with them. Is there anything we can do? Is there pictures? And because we can't have sheriff and our Westminster City PD or Hampstead everywhere at all times, following buses. And I'm so glad that this program is implemented because it is helping. I think that, the education is out there and people are understanding like, oh, I can get a fine and I can get a ticket and I don't want that on my record. So I'm glad that we have this program here in this county. And I really thank your department for everything that they're doing.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I do think that this is, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Dr. Dorsey?
When I look at this, I still wonder about the trends that we're seeing, AM versus PM, as far as stop arm violations, or are there specific roads that are more noteworthy? Again, I just wonder about any trends such as that, AM, PM, locations, et cetera.
Your question about AM or PM is an interesting one. We would have to try to dig through the data with the help of the sheriff's office to kind of look at that. I'm not sure if the limited amount of violations that I've looked at through camera footage, I haven't noticed a difference between AM and PM.
Okay, yeah, I
But
didn't know whether people
we
were
certainly
rushing
have
to
some
work.
locations that are more prevalent than others as far as the number of violations.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was going to say I didn't know whether AM or PM, whether it had something to do with people feeling like they were rushed to get to their jobs or whatever. And so that sort of was something that I was
It's a
wondering.
good thought. You might think that AM would be more prevalent because you do have more commuter traffic on the roads in the morning that are there with buses, as opposed to buses leaving schools 2:30 to 3:30 in the afternoon. Some are later than that, obviously, with the third-tier schools. But you might have a good point about AM being more. We'll take a look at that.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Ms. Savigny?
Yeah, and I was going to say, this is completely anecdotal, but, I've experienced on Route 140, there's a lot of times that I get behind a bus and, you stop and it's a 3-lane highway at that point, and whenever I would come to a stop behind the buses, there were times when, like, multiple days where I would have somebody almost rear end me because they weren't paying attention and they weren't stopping. And to your point, like, when in doubt, stop. Yeah. But there were lots of like near misses in the past, and that doesn't seem to be happening, at least on that particular route anymore. It seems like people are more aware now, and so totally anecdotal, but it seems like there is some of the intended effect is happening.
Well, we hope so.
Right.
So I have just one more question. So 42, that's just like a free-for-all there. So anyway, I picked up my one granddaughter yesterday, I think it was, or the day before, in the evening, and then you said 20 feet. So a tractor-trailer, the bus was here, the tractor-trailer was here, and there was about a foot between those two. Now, does he get a picture?
Dan?
If he doesn't pass the lights of the bus, he does not get a
Okay,
citation.
well, he was about a foot from that. So anyway, I mean, he was like nose to her on, her side and his side.
And that's a good point, because these are the citations that the bus patrol people have reviewed and say they meet the letter of the law. They are then sent to the sheriff for further review. But there are a number of cases, like you said, where I look at them and I say, that person should have been ticketed. I mean, they had plenty of warning with the yellow lights. But that's the way, they're very technical to make sure that these would pass judgment if they went to court.
Okay, I was just curious on that because we've had accidents and they run it and all that stuff. So I know at 42 they've been donating. Mr. Whistler.
Again, I'm sorry, and I hate to put you on the spot, and I know it wasn't part of your report, but every year the state legislature tries to enact legislation of electric buses in our state. Can you briefly, because again, we don't talk about transportation issues too much at our board meetings, can you just generally summarize for us what kind of impact that would have on us financially if we were ever to have to comply with electric buses in our fleet to transport our children back and forth to school?
I can share, what I know about it. Obviously, the cost of electric bus is tremendous in terms of relative to a diesel bus. It's about 3 times the cost. Now, there are programs out there that help subsidize that currently, but the infrastructure would have to be built out, to support an electric bus fleet. That's number one. We have contractors that range in size from 1 bus to 40 buses. And maybe it would be easier for a 40-bus operator to have the facilities installed, but how would you handle the individual ones? My biggest concern right now is the range of these buses. What we're being told is 80 to 100 miles before it has to be recharged. And you can see in the report that many buses, our average miles per trip, per route, are about 100 miles.
You can't go anywhere.
So, that's a concern. If we were forced to implement this, there would be a cost factor, but there would also be an infrastructure factor, and then we would have to determine what routes could be supported by electric buses. It would have to be a route that, would be within that 100-mile range and then have some way to recharge the batteries. So, we have a number of concerns with the legislation as it would impact us currently, yes.
Yeah, I share your concerns, and so I'm glad Commissioner Vigliotti's here, and if anyone from the state delegation is listening, but electric buses would significantly affect Carroll County with regards to cost. Also, electric buses don't warm up very quickly, so our children would be very cold going to school, especially in those cold winter months. Mm-hmm. Those diesel buses heat up pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. So I hope that we're on the lookout from the state legislature to fight any kind of mandate, or if they are implementing it, to make sure there's adequate waivers in place for places like Carroll County, rural jurisdictions like ours, to fight it and get exceptions. But I appreciate your explanation.
Sure.
Ms. Battaglia.
I was just going to say, you said 80 to 90 miles.
80 to 100 is what we've been told currently with the current technology, yes.
Yeah, that's not going to work around here.
Rolling
No.
Carroll County.
No. That's interesting. That's all they work? Wow. Well, I'm hope that we don't have to do anything like that. We can keep our diesel buses.
Yeah, there are a number of counties that are starting down that road, Montgomery in particular. So we're going to be very interested in the results and see what that looks like.
And let alone how much one of them costs too. Which, I mean,
over $350,000 to $400,000. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, sir.
Sure. Oops.
And now we will have a report on the blueprint implementation. Ms. McCabe.
At our November 30th delegation meeting, we discussed the impact of the blueprint funding requirements. There is a significant amount of time and energy being devoted across the school system to the policy aspects of the blueprint. The state agencies have produced the state plan and the templates that all 24 local systems will submit for our first local blueprint comprehensive implementation plan for this year. I've asked Mr. O'Neill to share an overview of this process, the timeline, and how we intend to inform you throughout.
Great, thank you, and good evening. This may not be as exciting as Mr. Hardesty's presentation a second ago, although Miss Jordan has been waiting for this all night. Last time you were convened with the delegation, we talked about blueprint funding, and what we are starting to see is some of the impacts related to the funding. The other part of the plan, which we kind of mentioned that night, is the policy aspects, or what do we have to implement in our schools or in our school systems, and then how are we held accountable for the for the policy or the instructional pieces as well. And that will come in the form of a local comprehensive implementation plan. So this school system and all of the other 23 school systems have to have a plan. It has to be based on a state plan, sort of a model or a template, and this March will be the first time that each local school system will submit their first comprehensive implementation plan. Those dates were adjusted from the original version of the blueprint in the last General Assembly session, and so you can see the dates on the screen here. And the AIB did adopt the state plan and the templates at their December 1st meeting. And so we've had access to that for a little bit of time now. There is a hyperlink which I think would be available on our website for anybody who would want to click on that link, and you can see a recent enough working version of the plans, both the state plan, the local template, and the criteria, or the sort of the rubric on which they're going to judge our plan. This will become, by the way, an annual event with the blueprint. So each year we will send some revised version of the local implementation plan to the state. It's organized by the 5 pillars, which I know we've talked about in the past, the way the blueprint is sort of structured, and it does include expected outcomes, measurables, deliverables, and has some defined tasks for each part of the plan in the template they provided. All of this is based on the law itself, wherever all of those parts of the blueprint ended up in the state education article. And so, here I'm just providing some of the statutory references for what, how the law was written as to what needs to be in a local implementation plan. And where we are in process and why Superintendent McCabe wanted us to bring this evening is this is a lot of work, and it's in process right now. So we got the draft on December 1. Many of us who are trying to guide the process here, we're waiting for that. It has been shared with all of the appropriate staff on the planning team, and if you think back even a couple of years ago, we outlined our local planning group here based on the 5 pillars, and each pillar had a team lead and so forth and so on. So that information went to the team lead, and certainly the blueprint administrator has it, and we've sort of assigned responsibilities, and there is simply not a lot of time to do this. Get it here so that you can see it and vet it, and we need to talk about that for a second tonight as well, and then get it to the state on the deadline that they've set for us in the revised law. So we've given our staff an internal date to finish their work on each pillar by before we would leave for the holiday, and when we come back from the holiday, we will be collating and combining that into the working first draft of that plan. Superintendent intends to bring you whatever that draft looks like in time for your January board meeting. And as you know, we have this meeting here tonight, but the documents that come to this meeting are due somewhat in advance, so you have time to look at them. This unfortunately is going to be a process both in January and then again in February, when we bring you how much further we are with the working draft, where we're most likely not going to be able to bring you the absolute final draft that will be presented to the state. We'll just do our best to update you as we go. They have made a decision the state has made a decision based on their read of the blueprint that this plan, the local implementation plan, does not require Board of Ed approval. It is up to each local Board of Ed and their school system to determine whether or not the board wants to officially approve it. And so I know the superintendent wanted you to have some discussion about that tonight. And mainly what we want, well, I guess maybe there's 2 points we want to make. One is it will be very hard to get you a final draft at your February meeting and then it has to be submitted by March. There might be just enough time to bring it back, but there wouldn't be a lot of time, there wouldn't be any time for revisions between then and the submission date. There's also no choice to submit this. And so that, that is, I think, worth mentioning. The superintendent, at the end of the day, does not have an option to not submit a plan to the AIB as required. And then I think this was probably on another slide, but that's not the end of the process. That's the deadline to get it to the state, and then what they're describing is an iterative process after that, where they provide us feedback, they ask us questions, they look at our data and see if it needs to be cured in any way, and they work that back and forth with us as each local school system until the close of the fiscal year or the end of June, and that's kind of when our final approved plan from the state would exist. And that plan from that point forward would be the baseline by which our work as a school system towards implementing the blueprint completely and sufficiently based on their review is that's sort of the baseline for moving forward through the subsequent years of the 10-year blueprint window. That may be okay in future years, but that's very challenging in these initial years because it doesn't, here's some items we identify as challenge. First of all, our folks are never going to come here and complain to you, and I'm not complaining, but I do want to note on their behalf, there are a lot of people who have full-time jobs already who are spending copious amounts of time, energy in meetings and in work and in writing this plan and reviewing it. The plan requires stakeholder feedback, and some of these other bullets here, they may be better to handle in future years, but in this initial year with this initial timeline, not so much so. This timeline this year does not lend itself to a lot of meaningful stakeholder impact from the development level on. So what we're going to do is do our best as we develop drafts by pillars to find the stakeholder groups that most align to that pillar and get it to them and offer them a chance at least for some feedback. And in some cases, those stakeholder groups are part of our process anyway, or we're at least in ongoing conversations with them. But that's a bit of a challenge in the first year. It doesn't align with your budget timeline. Question?
Ms. Savigny wants to make
Oh,
a
I mean, you can
statement.
finish your
Okay.
comments.
Finish
I
your
just
comment.
want, yeah.
And again, in future years, that may not be the case, but at least for this year, that it doesn't align well with your budget timeline. The superintendent has to bring you a budget in January. You have to submit one to the county in February, and we don't know what kind of feedback we'll ultimately get in our final plan by the close of the fiscal year. So if some of that feedback were to would require outcomes that might necessitate a budget change, I guess what we'd have to do is look at budget adjustments or categorical transfers, working throughout the fiscal year or the next school year. I'm not sure how else we would handle that. It also doesn't align great with other just annual things we do, like the staffing process, how we determine where we're going to allocate staff at our school level. And I'm not sure that particularly does cure itself in the future, because there could still be adjustments that require staffing changes. But it does concern me in this first year that we have negotiated provisions on transfer timelines, for instance, and then there's a timeline that we go through between human resources and the school directors, and Mr. Shockney and special ed, where we're trying to allocate staffing, and more importantly, we're trying to hire staff to meet those allocations now, not much later in the spring or summer. So that's a bit of a challenge, especially early on. We've talked a lot about space or capital considerations, and at least in the initial years, it doesn't align well with collective bargaining timelines either. And it would have been nice to have had some more guidance on certain things. I understand they're also building a plane in flight at the state level too. I get that. But these first years are a little bit challenging. So we just want to bring you this update because we've talked about money recently. We haven't talked about the policy parts of the blueprint, but it's coming pretty fast at you. And I'm guessing Mrs. McCabe would say she'd be interested in your thoughts on what level of approval you'd like to have as a board on this plan.
Yes, I would just add to what Mr. O'Neill just said. The AIB isn't requiring us to get board approval at the local level, but as you can imagine, I can't imagine moving forward without our board on board with our plan. So that's why we're rushing to get something written to be able to present to you so that we can get your feedback and still meet our March deadline for the state.
And the scope of this, by the way, which is probably the one thing I failed to mention or include, the template itself is 99 pages with a limit of another 99 pages for sort of the written or narrative components. But in addition to the written and narrative components, there's a large set of data tables that must be completed and filled out that would be sort of supplemental to the 200 pages already. And then there are many sections that have required linked artifacts. So I presume they believe we would turn those into online files that you would click to. And then for any section, you have the option of linking as many artifacts as you want. So just as you're thinking about this, hundreds of pages is what we would be asking you to kind of be reviewing in the ongoing way with us as we go through this.
So are you coming to work tomorrow?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Ms. Savigny.
So, and I appreciate that, because that was actually where my question was going to lead, was like, give us a sense of what kind of volume this document is entailing and how detailed these implementation plans need to be, because you are trying to build a plane in flight, right? And you know, there may be some things that you put in this implementation plan, depending on how detailed it has to be, that you may later determine are completely infeasible, right? Like you're trying to figure out a plan, understand the guidelines, figure out a plan, and execute it all at the same time with no understanding of what the funding levels are going to be, how negotiations are going to play out. Like, there are some things that you could put in this plan, if it's that detailed, if it's several hundred pages, that, you know, by the end of this year, maybe in June, when you try to actually start implementing it, you say, oh crap, this isn't going to work. And so what leeway is there to modify it, right? Like, so if you're implementing, you're sending something in March, right? Like, you're submitting something in March, there's going to be some questions and some feedback from the state, and we would make modifications based on their questions or guidance. But outside of that, what leeway is there to make changes along the way as you realize whether things are even remotely feasible or not?
Yeah, so in scale, it's comprehensive. It's pretty daunting and massive. It ranges from the full spectrum of some parts of this template are about showing financial data and actuals, for instance, particular to teacher salary and the 10% initial phase-in of increase to the salary scale under the blueprint. Some parts of it are very much instructional student outcome, student achievement targets, and some parts of it are sort of policy or philosophical. And I think, so in fairness to them, they're hosting a lot of technical assistance sessions right now, which is great, but we still have to have this done before we go home for the break so that we can compile it when we come back. So, you know, that's those things are happening at the same time. Some of those things I think could be adjusted on the fly. You know, for instance, a recruitment strategy. I don't see that after a year of experience in our next submission, if we said, well, you know, that didn't really work, so we would like to shift that strategy to this, I don't see that as something that would necessarily be a big deal with the state. Some things would go away, like if you've I believe would go away, like if you've demonstrated you've met this first salary required target, that would need to remain in a plan. I believe they would come up with some additional measure for the second version. Other things, and maybe Nick should speak for this, but in the blueprint coordinator meetings at the state, I hear this from the folks who are there with me who have much more of an instructional background than I do. While the state is trying to do their best and say, in this first plan, we just want to, they would say something like, we just want to get a feel for where you are right now. We're just trying to set a baseline. But what I hear instructional people say is, That makes me very nervous because over a 10-year window, I need to have very clear outcomes I'm seeking to plan for, and I don't like the looseness, maybe that's not a fair word, I don't like not knowing what the 5 or 10-year outcome is going to be to tell you where I am in year one, if that makes any sense. So there's a lot of concern at the instructional level, like, it would be really good to have some down the road understanding of what the requirement's going to be to build from there. For right now, they're going to, that process back and forth, approve the plan by June. They have to then turn around in the future. By August 1, they'll tell us what the requirements are for next year's plan, and then we'll have that additional amount of time to get back to a March deadline for submission number 2. They'll assess it on a rubric, and that'll start at the Maryland State Department of Ed before that recommendation goes to the AIB to say whether we've done a good job or not. They also will begin, as part of the blueprint as well, there's something called expert review teams, where teams of folks led by MSD will show up in each and every school over time, not every school in every school system every year, but that's more like a 2 or 3 day site visit to a school to observe teachers and look at materials and that sort of thing. And so that's another way in which they'll be assessing our progress under our plans.
Okay. Dr. Dorsey, did you want to say something?
I was just going to question, has the rubric been created at this point?
Very much so. And if you were to go to this link, or certainly I could forward it through the superintendent to you, you see several documents there, but you would see the state plan, and so that's the plan that the AIB owns, and that includes components for local boards of ed, higher education, local workforce development boards of the full spectrum of Maryland education. That's now part of this blueprint. And then there's the local template. That's the 99-page template that we get to add 99 pages to, plus charts and graphs and so forth. And then there's something Dr. Dorsey called the criteria for success. That's what I'm loosely calling the rubric. And then that has each pillar, each objective, and sort of prompts, I guess, is that a fair word? The prompts that they'll use to say, have you met these things?
Okay, so that gives you guidance as far as knowing what the expectation is then. Okay.
Now, I know in Carroll County, we've discussed this many times before, but this drives me crazy on page 4 when it states in one of the bullets, close student achievement gaps. In Carroll County, we should not be closing the achievement gap. We need to always bring the bottom up. We're not going to dummy down the top. That is, I don't know how you all feel, and I know, Donna, you and I specifically have talked about this, that when it states close the student achievement gap, that is a no-no. We need to help the bottom and raise it up. And I don't know how we can address that. But that is a wrong statement from Carroll County. We're not closing gaps. We want to raise everybody up.
So that is,
yeah, I agree. You have to look closely at how you make that statement to close the gap.
So, yes.
It's like, so the only way to completely close the gap, right, like in a short period of time, is to bring the top level down, right? Like, but that's not what we want to do. We want to bring everybody up and close
Carroll
it
County.
this way. But that's not necessary, and I hope that the criteria for success kind of address that, rather than it just simply being a close the achievement gap statement, because there are multiple ways to do that, and most of them are inappropriate. There's only one way to do that appropriately.
Correct. We agree with you, and nothing that is in any of our plans would look at bringing achievement down for one group to decrease that gap. We're looking at making sure that all students are achieving at or above grade level standards.
So what can we help you do as a board? We've got to decide whether we need to approve this or let them go on with them by themselves, and we need some input.
so there are 5 pillars, and 5 of you.
Pick one out of the
Seriously,
hat.
we need to help you.
Right.
You know, we really do. Ms. Savigny.
I mean, personally.
I'm sorry, Emily.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Emily.
I just had a really quick question. On page 4, it says use additional funds for teacher collaborative time. What are those additional funds?
So A good bit of the blueprint is about interventions and also about teacher time. And in the early years of the blueprint, and I should commit this to memory because I keep getting asked this, it's like 3 or 4 years, or maybe it shifts in the 5th year. There's a funding program, a program for which there's dedicated funds called TSI, which stands for Transitional Supplemental Instruction, and it deals mostly, at least in my read, with sort of early literacy and getting kids to grade level early on. Another part of the blueprint discusses teacher time, how much time a teacher spends in front of, sort of in the way most of us older people would traditionally think of a person teaching a class of kids, standing in front of the room teaching a class of kids or moving about, versus other time. And so for the blueprint, the other time, and it's also defined in law, but I didn't paste it here, that other time would be a myriad of things, but part of that would be collaborative time between teachers to engage in professional development, to look at student data and identify students in need or students at risk, and to provide those interventions to students in real time. So it would be the philosophical goal is a shift from maybe a more traditional model of, here's your school day and interventions are after school or push in or pull out some kids to provide interventions, and you design your whole school structure and your whole school day and have enough staff to do it so that there's teaching going on all the time, but there's also this collaborative time where a lot of things are happening, one of them being direct, hands-on intervention with kids at the individual or smaller group levels.
So is this expected to be funded by county commissioners? Where are we expecting this money to come from? Is this?
Yes, by county committee.
There.
There is a state.
Look at that big smile down there.
There is a state and a local share for all of for most of the program areas, and so in the minds of the folks who wrote this law and the consultants they hired to help them get here, they would say that they believe that sufficient funding would exist in each of those program areas. Now, and we could certainly debate that. I don't want to make everybody revisit the last meeting, but more importantly, they're sort of restricting the funding to say you have to spend it in these areas, and that I think is ultimately where I don't know what the right word would be. I don't want to use the word conflict, but tension would occur for the local funding authority to say, if we have to shift resources that we currently have, we either need additional funding to offset those shifts that we're required to make, or there are some side effects of that, things like possibly class size changes or resource changes among different schools. And so in that case, Ms. Tedeschi, yes, if at a local level you want to not have those side effects occur, then the only way around that would be more local funding to keep them from happening.
Thank you.
Ms. Savigny.
I was just going to bring it back to the original question of that Ms. McCabe is looking for, do we need to approve this? Do we just want to review it? I appreciate I think it's interesting that the AIB is saying that, well, local school boards don't need to approve it. I think we should have the ability to say whether we want to approve it or not, and I appreciate you bringing it to us in the spirit of partnership and collaboration. Like that's how we work as a school system, right? Like you're never going to just do this stuff without consulting us, right? So I want to say that I appreciate that first and foremost. I think that we probably want to approve it, but under the understanding that you guys are up against the gun, and there's only so much we're not going to be able to understand every little bit of nitty gritty and approve each little element of it, but basically say, yes, we've looked at it, we generally understand the major components, and we think that the way that you're trying to go about this makes sense, right? Like, at least provide that kind of guidance from the board level. I don't know if other board members kind of agree with that approach, or.
That's why I got mine. Mr. Whistler?
I think March if I'm not mistaken, March 8th is our board meeting that month.
It's early. Yes, sir.
So it's a week before the deadlines. Maybe if we just get a status, just a general high picture look of where you're at, what you recommend, any kind of obstacles you think happen or might happen, but just, that would be good enough for me.
Right, like kind of an executive summary of here's the key points, right? The key components of what we're looking to achieve.
So our plan was to bring you the draft that we have at our January board meeting.
Okay, that's a good idea.
And report on it like we have tonight with what we've written as a staff and what we plan to turn in. And that will give you time to look at what we present that night, have a discussion, a back and forth with us, and then be able to get back with us so that we can make any revisions that you might recommend in February before we turn it in March.
Sounds like a plan.
Right.
That's great.
Right, and that way we can keep in constant contact with the delegation as well, with the challenges that we're seeing. And, because Senator West and Senator Reedy were asking for, okay, what are the biggest pain points, right? And how can we help potentially down in Annapolis and in furthering the discussion on those pain points? So I would appreciate that discussion so that we can, give them some idea of what the biggest challenges are.
Dr. Dorsey, do you have any ideas?
I'll go along with Mrs. McCabe's suggestion. Again, it sounds like it's something you're already considering doing anyway. So, yeah, if we can see where we are in January and go from there. But again, I see it's going to take a lot of time and attention and work. So thanks up front for taking care of it.
And money.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say, is just kind of like what had happened with the COVID funds. It was kind of like, here's a report to tell you what is going on. We gave our input as far as where the funding was happening. With this, we're going to be getting an update on what we're going to have to do to get the funding to happen. So I think just getting an update on it is perfectly acceptable. I mean, this is going to be challenging.
Yes, it is.
And I trust in you guys to do this, because nobody wants to get in trouble.
All right, thank you. And now we will have a report on Every Student Succeeds Act, ESSA Consolidated Strategic Plan. Ms. McCabe.
Annually, we must submit an ESSA Consolidated Strategic Plan, which details our work in the programs partially funded by the federal title grants. Mr. Shockney is here with an overview and to answer any questions you may have.
Good evening, board members. This is the report that historically Dr. Hart would bring to you. The report itself still consists of the same title reports that we have historically presented to you. What is a little bit different for this year is they consolidated the consolidated plan at MSDE. So the first tab, which is the consolidated plan, is just a little less than what it has historically been. But I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
I do have to make one comment.
This is consolidated?
This is
If anybody remembers what a Sears catalog looks like for the holidays or for fall and winter, that's bigger than that, and that is not consolidation, sir.
Well,
This is government consolidation.
This is government consolidation.
Okay,
And
not Sears.
the staff and curriculum instruction that work with Mr. Murray, this is a product of their work. So as this works, the staff has already, it's kind of a unique process in that we braid together the title grants after they're written. So a lot of staff here have worked hard behind the scenes writing the each individual title grant, and all I did was just synthesize and kind of braid it and align it with, it's all directly aligned with your strategic plan.
Any comments, questions? I thank everybody, because that is a lot of work for everybody that's on that team, and I do appreciate that, because that is more than.
It's a lot of reading.
Very much.
All right, thank you. All right, now we will move on to action items. I need a motion for the approval of personnel appointments.
So moved.
And a second
I'll second.
by Ms. Savigny. Ms. McCabe.
Okay, this evening I have 3 appointments I'm recommending. The first is Arlene Moore, who has been an elementary principal with us and is currently a supervisor in our special education department. I'm recommending her for our Equity and Community Relations Officer position. And I will also say that Ms. Moore is in our audience this evening. Next, we have Maria Martin, who is currently serving as an assistant principal at Winters Mill High School. We are recommending her for the open supervisor of student supports position. We had a retirement there. And then to backfill Ms. Martin's position at Winters Mill, I'm recommending Stacy Novotny, who is currently a special educator at Winters Mill, to acting assistant principal at Winters Mill High School.
Comments, questions? I will say one thing. I know one of our great times was when Miss Moore was principal at Hampstead and received a Blue Ribbon Award for that school. And that was a lovely evening in Annapolis. And that's one of the last times we had an enjoyable evening and was able to get out, and then COVID hit. But yeah, right before COVID. But I just wanted, this is Miss Moore. So anyway, yes. So she goes above and beyond, and I'm just so happy for you. And everyone. So, all right, I will call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. Now I need a motion for the approval of personnel action items.
So moved.
By Ms. Battaglia, seconded by?
I'll second.
By Ms. Savigny. Ms. McKay?
The monthly personnel action items this month contains 4 new hires, 1 broken contract, and 1 leave of absence. And I would like to amend this list by removing the broken contract from the list of action items.
Okay, so what I will do is I'll make a motion to remove the broken contract section of this report.
That sounds great, thank you.
And do I have a second?
I was going to say, I need a second.
I'll second.
Ms. Battaglia? Any other comments? We have to vote on that first. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, now we will go back, and now I need a motion for the amended approval of personnel action items.
So moved.
By Ms. Battaglia, seconded by?
I'll second.
By Ms. Savigny. Any other comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. At this time, I need a motion for the approval of award of bids.
So moved.
By Ms. Battaglia. I need a second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Whistler.
Good job.
Seconded. Comments, questions? I'm glad you're getting that rhythm now. Okay, that's good. Wait a minute, Ms. Savigny, you don't have any questions on bids?
I know, like, people might have a heart attack, but I do not have any questions on the award of bids.
I changed the school for tomorrow, probably because of her.
I have things highlighted that I'm very happy that those things were in here, but yes, I have no questions.
So we have a first and a second. I call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. And the last action item, I need a motion for the approval of audit committee appointees.
So moved.
And I need a second. Mr. Whistler, seconded. Comments? Questions? Ms. McCabe, you're on.
Tonight, I'm recommending 2 candidates for membership on the Audit Committee, Ms. Kathleen Collins and Mr. Brett Johnson. These 2 members would replace 2 members whose terms are now expiring. We had a very solid pool of applicants for these openings, and both candidates are very well qualified for the role.
Questions or comments? I just want you all to know, of course, I've taught almost everybody in Carroll County, and I taught Brett. So anyway, he's a great guy. So I just wanted to put those 2 cents. And I know he was wonderful in high school, and I'm sure he will do a fantastic job.
Yeah, and I do just want to say, I did have the pleasure of working with Ms. Collins for a few years early on in my tenure, and she would be a welcome addition back to the group. And I just want to thank everyone who applies for these positions. It's really the amazing volunteers that we have in the system to help out that makes this all work. So thank you to everyone who applied.
All right, I call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. We do not have anything for discussion, but do we have any unfinished business or new business? Ms. Battaglia's got her card up. Ms. Battaglia.
I would like for us to hold a work session on our bullying, discipline, and accountability policies. Increase bullying has occurred in person and online, as well as disciplinary situations that we are hearing about, as we heard from some of our employee groups today, which all of this feeds into our school day and creating disruptions. This is not just a school system issue, this is a community issue. With this work session, I would like for us to develop a anti-bullying discipline committee that includes members of our community. I would like for us to have like a peer review group in our high schools, if possible. I would also like to see the Board of Ed, the county commissioners, and delegates do a PSA for CCPS to create an anti-bullying, what is expected good behavior policy. This needs to be a community and all hands on deck effort, and if permitted by my fellow board members, if we get all this going, I would like to head this effort along with working with our staff. We can get feedback from our CAT community, from our SGA, and other community groups to make an anti-bullying campaign successful. We can have subgroups for elementary, middle, and high school ages, as well as hearing from what is happening with CCEA and CASE. So board members, I'd like for us to get the ball rolling on this as soon as possible.
All right. Anybody have any cards or comments?
I guess I'll
Start.
Okay,
Ms.
If we
Bigney.
have some discussion on this. So just trying to understand, are you saying that you want to have a work session from the board to brainstorm about best ways to approach this first and then go about this? Or are you saying that you would like us to take it directly to community groups first?
So the work session would be basically unpacking what our bullying policy and discipline policies are. Because we basically just have discussions regarding it and we just approve the policies. But I think we need to unpack it. We need to actually break it down, answer the different questions, whether it be, okay, so is there a 3-count rule? And depending upon what the level of the bullying was it something that was online? Was this like a first-time thing? But was it really bad? Was it like something that should not have occurred? And Emily, I think, hearing from students' perspective on this too, we hear a lot online stuff. And we need to do better. And I think we need to start by definitely unpacking the policy and then begin looking at our disciplinary actions and what we can do to break that down. Getting a lot of feedback from the community, I think is extremely important on this, as well as our employee groups. Because we are hearing that we are having staff being beat, basically. I'm just going to be blunt about it. I mean, our staff members are being pretty beat up physically by some students. So we also need to look at that disciplinary part of what happens to all of this. So I think we have to have a massive community effort to do a little bit better and bring everybody together and break it all down.
Mr. Straker. I know this, this is like something that we know nothing about, but anyway, it'll need to still be discussed, but I just need your input. I know we had a community meeting 2 days ago, 3 days ago, or it was last week?
End of last week.
And what was that called?
We had a community wellness night that focused on suicide prevention. I think we had 3 parents.
So I know I'm putting you on the spot, and I am telling you, your face was priceless, and it was, and I know you're off guard, but I just, this is your area of expertise, and I just want your thoughts.
Wow. Are you sure? No. So I think we certainly have seen an increase in all kinds of challenges, but it is a community issue, and I think one of the challenges that we have is we have to work within our policies, regulations, and those of the state of Maryland. I think that often we have people that are frustrated because in their school experience that certain behaviors would have resulted in what was referred to as an expulsion from school, as an example. Like that is automatically a student is removed and is no longer allowed to attend school. That's not the case anymore. In order for a student to be expelled from a school system in Maryland, they have to continue after the event, after the extended suspension of 45 days, they have to continue to pose an imminent threat of serious harm. That is a tremendously high legal standard. Am I correct, Mr. Amelia, the way? That's good. At least I know something. So I think it's really important. Our community gets frustrated by that. We have multiple parents. That kid shouldn't be allowed to come here anymore. Or, that issue is a bullying issue. It happens within the school. It happens at home. It happens between students. And often when we get into it, it's both directions. It's not one way or the other. And as we try to take steps to mitigate, a lot of families are frustrated because it doesn't stop. I'm sure Sheriff DeWeese is frustrated. We saw earlier about our stop arm. There's laws that say you can't pass a bus with flashing lights. Clearly, we have data that says people don't follow those laws. We have laws about drunken driving, and people don't follow those laws. We have rules and regulations about bullying, and we have students who continue to exhibit those behaviors. We have students that have some physical, it's a little bit of, Ms. Battaglia, your proposal is very broad. A lot of different pieces in there. When you talk about staff and that staff interaction, we have had staff engaged with students. We've had work comp claims put in. It's not my area of expertise, but I know that we've had some of those situations where we've had students involved in physical altercations where staff have intervened, and those have resulted in staff injuries to the level of workers' compensation. We also have students who need intensive behavioral interventions where staff are engaged. So that's very apples and oranges. We could have students whose behavior is externalized individually, where staff are then intervening with that student, as well as situations where students are physically going after one another. So I think we need to narrow things down and kind of get really what we're looking at. That the other challenge is bullying alone. Like one change we made in the policy this year that actually went into effect this year is that if bullying is reported to school administration and it's determined to be bullying, that they will then enter that into the bully reporting system. Prior to that, if it was reported and found to be bullying, the only things we had data on were the events that were put in the bullying reporting system. I will share that, it'll be interesting to see what that data looks like in a year after we've put that in play. But it's not a highly utilized reporting system. Students don't put in those reports often. We encourage parents to put those reports in. And I think that there is frustration because often, and as a parent myself, if my child's on the wrong end of something, what I feel is justice at the moment or even in the long term isn't necessarily something that as a school system that we're allowed to actually do. So there's certainly a big challenge that we face, but I struggle with the idea that I certainly think it's beyond the school system. I think we live in a very polarized society right now where there's a tremendous amount of things going both directions. So as a school system, we're a microcosm of that. We certainly are navigating that. And I think our administrators are working really hard, our teachers are working really hard, our assistants. Everybody's trying to work through those situations as they come up, student-to-student interaction, and we are struggling. We work with our partners in law enforcement. We work with our school resource officers. How do we respond to these behaviors? What is the extent of the authority that we have? And how do we operate, given all those parameters, how do we operate and do the best we can to ensure the safety of our students and that we have schools that are, meet the level of decorum that our community expects. It is certainly a challenge. I'll say this, I don't think that it doesn't make it better, because as somebody mentioned earlier, like we're worried about what happens here in Carroll. Around the state, that we're not unique.
Right.
You know, I think you can see that across the state of Maryland, and I'm sure in the whole country. So we have, we enjoy a better situation than many of our surrounding jurisdictions, but that doesn't mean that what we're dealing with is the way we want it to be.
Right.
But I would definitely say that we have less occurrences of those significant behaviors, but we're seeing an uptick, and they're certainly challenging to deal with. And the interventions that we can put in place to prohibit it, to respond to it, and to prevent it from happening, we're working off of a shorter deck than we used to have. And I'm going back, like 2016 is when the Maryland legislature changed those laws for extended suspensions and whatnot, to limit those to a 45-day window. So that was legislated. That's not something we have to operate within that law. I think it was 16, Mr. Miller.
He amazes me. He remembers all that stuff.
And it's a major part of that, the implementation of restorative practices at the school level. That it tremendously reduced the number of out-of-school suspensions, among other things, and the length of the out-of-school suspensions, and the requirement for alternative educational opportunities in every out-of-school suspension, which had an impact on our already excellent alternative educational program offerings that we had in place to begin with. Not necessarily for the better.
Well, I want to thank you, and I know I put you on the spot, but I'm glad you told us and reminded us of things that we have implemented, and we're going forward. But thank you very much.
Sure.
Ms. McCabe, you had your card up, and then.
I'd like to suggest, certainly we can do a work session, and I'd like to suggest that a good first step to start maybe getting our arms around this is for Ms. Battaglia to meet with Mr. Streaker and Mr. Shockney and really talk about where we are with our bullying and discipline policies and what we might be able to kind of narrow the issues down to in order to have a productive work session on it.
So I think definitely, it is consistent, like almost on a weekly basis, we hear something is happening in some level of school. I know we have like the Family Life Committee. It'd be nice to see if we had some other type of committee like that, an anti-bullying committee where we can hear from members of CAC, or we can hear from those parents and community members on things they might be hearing that they are seeing or hearing, or something new that has come out as a deterrent or a way to help a community in some way. I just, because we keep saying we have a zero tolerance policy. Well, we say that, and then we just keep hearing that these things are happening. So it's to the community, it looks like we're not doing anything, and we're not trying to, but it's also at the same time, we know our hands are tied with certain rules and laws from the state.
Right. And because of the state laws that we have to follow, I would kind of just get out there that I don't think it would be fair to say that we have a zero tolerance policy. What I would say is that we don't tolerate disruptive or violent behavior without interceding in some way. That doesn't mean, as Mr. Streaker said, that doesn't mean that the student who is the offender is going to be gone from your school starting the next day. But we try to work within the confines that we have to get the outcomes that we need for our students.
Thank you. Ms. Savigny?
I just wanted to piggyback on some of the prior comments that were made with respect to the elementary behavioral task force that we had several years ago. And one of the things that we had found was a lot of the behavioral issues were multiple infractions by a small group of individual kids. right? It wasn't necessarily, I mean, you can see sort of a degradation of the respect levels in the elementary schools overall, but the most immediate issues were multiple infractions by a small group of individuals. And the way Mr. Falls explained it to me at the time, like some of it was an outfall of the change in legislation where you couldn't expel certain kids. And so what he would use that, the way Mr. Falls explained it to me, which made a lot of sense, I was saying, well, why can't we just, use alternative educational opportunities, the alternative schools to help out with that? And he said, well, I've lost my hammer. He said, I used to be able to go to parents who weren't necessarily doing the right things or willing to put their kids in the alternative school environment, but when they could say things like, well, if you don't do this, your child will be expelled, and then you'll have to take off from work and stay home and deal with all the ramifications of that while your child is at home. And that was the hammer that he could use to get the parents to do the right things, to get their kids into the alternative education environment. And he lost that hammer. Now he's got no way, or the other folks who are now in the system, they have no way to effectively, get the right things to happen, get the right things in motion. So is there another way that we could do that, right? Like how do we get kids into the right setting without having that hammer in place? So, or is there a way to impress that upon the legislation that we weren't a lot of these changes in legislation come about because of, trying to deal with issues in Baltimore City, abusing a process or whatever. Like we weren't abusing that process. We were using it, I think, very effectively to the benefit of our students, right? Like I think we actually put really good things in place that were helping our students. And then when they changed that legislation to deal with bad actors in another jurisdiction, it really penalizes us in the way that we had come up with some really effective ways, and we haven't necessarily found effective replacements. So is there a way to talk about how can we get exemptions, or is there anything that we can do? I don't know. I see Mr. O'Mealy saying,
Well, the two things. Part of what you were saying about losing the hammer is what I referred to with the alternative programs, not necessarily for the better. But one of the things that we could do before, when a student enrolled in an alternative program, we would have them agree to stay throughout the completion of an agreement. And now, under the regulations, they're allowed to return to their home attendance area school at the conclusion of the suspension, which is in most cases no more than 45 days. And in many cases, the student would benefit greatly by staying in the alternative program. And that is a significant change. Another change, which is statutory rather than regulatory, is the elimination of a out-of-school suspension in most cases for early elementary age children. And I'm sure that most people hearing that will say, well, of course, those children would never do anything wrong. They're little babies. And I think that's the initial, response. But the increase of behavioral incidents, it's not unique to Carroll. It's everywhere. And I guarantee you the pandemic didn't help. But, part of what Mrs. Battaglia is saying is people don't think we're doing anything. Part of our problem is that our hands are tied in what we can explain to the parent. We've got the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. We can't say, parent, I know your son is being bullied. You have to understand that the bullier has an IEP and he has to have a manifestation determination before. We can't say any of that. And we can't describe the other student's behavior intervention plan. We are very, very limited. What we can do, following from what we do with Title IX, is offer supportive measures, to help the student. But there's very little that we can say to the parent who wants the other kid expelled and expects that we do that. We can't share any of that information.
Thank you. Mr. Whistler.
Yeah, Ms. Pataglia, thank you. It's a great issue we should explore. I really appreciate that. We received a word earlier that we're going to be doing in-school surveys with regards to, what issues that may come up and explain whether or not we have existing perception problems or physical, literal problems in schools. I was just wondering, you chair the CAC right now, or you're the rep to the CAC. I would really be interested to learn, to see whether or not the CAC might be able to unpack the current policies we have, whether they're effective, whether they think they're effective, and to get their recommendations, and then commingle that with survey results we may get later on. And
There's the lady you need to talk to right there, Ms. Gaddis.
but again, just something to think about,
runs
rather than, and then the board addressing those kind of findings later. But I think it's a great thing we should pursue and look at. But I'm curious to know what the CAC perception is, if they think we have adequate policies. Do you think, should we change policies, adopt policies? But
Dr. Dorsey.
I'm glad you brought that up as a possible resource, because I know in the past we've said we want to find some real legitimate things that we can pass on to CAC to work on. So that certainly could be one. But as I'm listening to the conversation, I'm thinking about how the Curriculum Council started the meeting last week, or a few weeks ago, I guess it's been now, when we were talking about second step and sources of strength. The one presenter, as she stood, and I can't even remember now who the quote is by, but she basically was saying, when a kid doesn't know how to read, what do? We teach reading. When a kid doesn't know how to do math, what do? Well, we teach them how to do math. If they don't know how to write, we teach writing. Well, the next point was, what do we do when there are behavior problems or behavior issues? So it all comes back to, we need to treat that the same as we teach, or as we treat the reading and the math and the writing. We need to teach, good behavior and what behavior looks like. And in fact, I know that there are a lot of teachers and schools and everyone really working hard on teaching children, how to behave in school. I know at the elementary level, when we used to have the PBIS, we even had to break it down into the different localities. Well, when you're in the cafeteria, what does good behavior look like? When you're in, on the school bus or in your classroom. So again, it's something that we do break down, very literally, in each of the environments that the children would be in their during their school day. So I hear about the alternative programs, and again, I know they're great, they're fine, and I guess I'm thinking that we don't want to rush right to that. We need to make sure that we're spending some time teaching the kind of behaviors that we want our students to show while at school. And I know folks are working hard at that, and it's just something I know that we're going to have to continue to do. Going back to some of the comments that were made from Ms. Jordan, again, when we hear about staff members who are being hurt, or I think Mrs. Porter may have mentioned that as well, about a staff or staff incidents where children are misbehaving or being physical with their teachers. Well, we don't accept that. And when we talk about, reasons to really, give another opportunity as far as an in-school or an out-of-school suspension, well, that kind of thing just really falls right in line with that. But again, I just wanted to make the point that we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that we do have to teach behavior, because some kids come in and they don't know how to behave. We have to teach it.
And that is so true, Dr. Dorsey, and thank you, because I will tell you, I visited this one particular elementary school, and small children, and you think, they don't do anything wrong, but let me tell you, I was over at this one school several times, and the child was running out the door because he was mad. The student was mad, and then the police and the other people, the educators would have to chase him down, but it all goes back to his behavior, and he didn't know how to handle that. And they need help. But that's a very good point. Ms. Pataglia.
I understand that point of, going back to the behaviors, but I think the problem we're seeing is the behaviors are being repeated over and over again. And also what is happening is things are getting a little more violent. So you might have one student who punched one, IA or slapped an IA. Well, then next they stabbed an IA with a pencil. And then next they've broken the IA's arm. So I mean, and that could be from the same student. But I feel like sometimes the community thinks like an excuse is being made as to why that student can continue that behavior. So I think these are things that, like as I was suggesting, a work session regarding the bullying. Again, you have the same student who's doing it repeatedly over and over. And then you have that one student who says enough because they've gone to their administrator over and over, nothing was done, and that student takes their matters in their own hands. And then that student gets suspended when they were the one that was the victim and the target. So I think these are things that, like I said, we need to work on. We need to have a work session on it and start unpacking these. Whether we look at ways that we can better improve on identifying, was it really bullying or was this another situation? There was a card I had. It actually gave you a breakdown of, and I think I gave you a copy of that card, but it gave you is this really bullying or was this something else? The same with when we have a student who's misbehaving. Is it because, okay, they've had a bad day, or is it because this is something that's repetitive and we need to work on how to change that? So, and that's why I said, work session, building a committee of some type where, even if tracking these things, I don't know, but the community needs to be involved in knowing that we are addressing it. We are looking at things continuously, and they're involved in some of those decisions and discussions that we have to have with this.
Ms. Savigny.
I just wanted to say I agree with a lot of the comments that have been made tonight. Dr. Dorsey, we do need to teach behavior. I mean, what is a proper way to behave in school, and we need to hold kids to that structure and that discipline, right? We had a beloved kindergarten teacher who used to come here on a regular basis who would say, I learned everything that I needed to know in kindergarten, and it was basically be kind, right? Use your manners. But it really is a parent's job to start that process when the kids are younger, and it's not necessarily happening. We've seen some unkind behavior on the parents' part. We are in such a divisive society today. We've seen unkind behavior on the parents' part, and that just gets pushed on to the kids, and then they bring that into the schools. But if we can have a concerted effort by the community, I think it really is a community effort. And I agree with the comments about bringing CAC in. We've been trying to find a meaningful project for CAC for quite some time. This really feels like it has the makings of that, where they can engage the community and engage parents. There's an elementary school. I mean, I think it all starts at the elementary school, right? And there's an elementary school rep from every one of the schools on the CAC, and can they take that back to their school communities and say, look, we're going to have a community night at the school where we're going to talk to all the kindergarten and first grade families, and we're going to get the parents on board with this of, these are the behaviors that we need you to help model for your kids at home. And then, and these are the things that we're going to do for our kindergartners in terms of teaching them the right behaviors, right? So I think we can kind of bring, I really like the way this is potentially developing. I think it makes sense to have an opening workshop, like you had said, Ms. McCabe, and then we can maybe kind of put some parameters around it to have the CAC really investigate and brainstorm around what are some things that we could do to bring the entire community into it. So the community can help be part of the solution, but they also recognize that we are doing something, we're trying to do something to improve the situation.
So first thing, Ms. Battaglia, you have to set up a meeting with Mr. Streaker and his people, and then we can schedule a work session, and then we will have to figure out how we really need to include CAC and Ms. Gaddis and to go forward. Does anybody else have any other questions? Excuse me. Whoops. Okay. No. Okay. Are we finished
with that topic?
With that topic. Okay. And Dr. Dorsey, you have another topic.
Well, I have a question. I'm wondering about, Mrs. McCabe, if we can have an update on our technology plan, where we are with that now.
Okay.
Yes, that's something that we've been working on post-COVID, because as you know, our technology plan that we had to implement quickly to get us through COVID has come to an end, and now we are looking at what we need to do from here forward, especially since we have one-to-one devices for students that we have to now look at a replacement cycle for. We also have two LMS programs that we've been using that we need to look at getting rid of one and using another. So I know that our tech services department has been working with our instructional directors to develop a plan for where we go for the next 3 years and for the next 5 years. And so that's something that we can certainly put on the agenda for an upcoming meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Dorsey. Anything else?
I just
Here
wanted
we
to
go.
make
Miss Savigny.
I just wanted to make a quick comment on that. And that was one of the things that we had said for quite some time when we developed the original strategic plan, that one of the next steps behind the strategic plan was we needed an instructional technology plan. And it was one of those things where, all heck broke loose, and we had to get everything out there, for COVID. We were in the middle of kind of developing that full plan. Like I had basically said, I'd be willing to go to the commissioners to ask for that funding if we had a fully fleshed plan of how to do this. But then all of a sudden there was federal money available to get to a one-to-one basis for all the kids. But it's but that money's not going to continue. And, when we do have to put things on a replacement cycle, okay, we now don't have a plan for how to do all of that. So that's another thing that needs to go on the list of, discussion items with the commissioners of, how are we going to, it costs money.
Yes.
And it's not something that we have built into our plans at the moment, because it was a hurry up and get this all out there and deal with the ramifications later.
That's right. Our leaders have been working hard on that for us, and we knew that we needed new numbers, new data to look at, to roll into a budget plan. So, as I said, they would be very happy to come and present the work they've been doing and give an update on where we are.
Anything else?
I did have one other. Did Mr. Whistler have something?
New topic, if I may. Again,
Mr. Whistler.
and again, I know we have so much going on. And again, I'm sure this is already being worked on by staff, but the recent release of the NAEP scores and also the recent release of the state scores, I'm not sure if the data that was released by the state is refined enough for analytic review, but
It's not.
Yeah, I've heard it's not, but
No, it's not.
I would really
I can bring that up. Excuse me. I can bring that up right now because I usually do that on my comments. I've done that for the last 3 months, so I'm going to start it again. I can do it. Thank you. But I don't mean to take over, but yeah, I am. But I do need to tell the state that thank you for the numbers they gave us, but we need more numbers so Stephanie Dale can get to even more productive activities for our schools. But go ahead.
No,
Sorry.
So it just when the refined data is available, I would really appreciate your thoughts, your suggestions. Again, we don't need to necessarily have the plan of how to fix, but just the
They're working on it.
overall findings. And I'm really concerned about those folks, particularly the 4th and 5th graders that were 2nd and 3rd graders during the pandemic, missing that critical instruction. Our 10th and 11th graders that were 7th and 8th that missed that critical reinforcement education in middle school. But I'd really be interested to hear what the findings are and how we compare with other jurisdictions. But yeah, so not enough data.
That's a, yes, and when it comes in, like, that's a normal part of our practice here. So whenever we do get our state data in, and we have our folks, our staff, look at it, analyze it, and put it into a digestible format, then we do bring it to the very first board meeting we can get it to.
Okay, Ms. Savigny.
Okay, new topic.
Okay, all right.
I just wanted to let folks know. So I was contacted by a couple of our delegates who had been reached out to by several school system employees about attendance issues and truancy issues in the school system. So and kind of a general laxness that's happening across the schools as a result of the pandemic, right? So I think that there's a couple of aspects to this, but Delegate Krebs was one of the folks that reached out to me. But she said there were some school counselors and some teachers that reached out saying, we've had issues with attendance. It's tough. Parents are having a tough time getting their kids to come back into school. They're not dressing appropriately. Maybe the dress code issues are problematic. I think we've done a good job with the cell phones. I think, bring your own device policy revisions and principals being very structured in the way that they were dealing with the cell phone issue at the beginning of the school year. And I think it's taken hold beautifully. And Ms. Herbert, you were talking about South Carroll being in really good shape.
Absolutely. The students were dressed appropriately, and I just wanted to say, because I have seen other schools that have not been appropriate with their headdresses and pajamas, and that is not a conducive learning attire. It's like for you to go to bed. So, and that's why I wanted to point out that, it was really nice they were on point. They were like, okay, we're back to business. And it was really wonderful.
Right, and that may not be happening everywhere.
It's
based
not,
on
because I've been to others that have not.
We've been hearing a lot of so these folks that reached out to Delegate Krebs basically said, we've got issues with attendance being down. I don't know whether that's true or not. It's anecdotal. We could look at attendance reports.
I would say I try to keep up with our attendance rates on a regular basis. And, at this point, I'd say looking back to end of October, early November, we were at elementary, middle, and high at approximately an average of 94%. All of them were around 93 point something or 94 point something. Before COVID, we may have been at an average of 95%. So really, we've only decreased countywide by 1% if you're comparing where we are today versus pre-COVID, which is great. So I think what might be happening is there may be issues with particular students in particular schools that and rightly so, school counselors are concerned about.
Right, and I think that was kind of the situation that they were referring to, right? That there are certain children, certain students in certain schools that are presented with significantly more problems, right? And they were making reference to like some truancy laws, I guess, in Pennsylvania that are more robust. Like we wouldn't want to necessarily go down a completely punitive path, but like if kids aren't showing up for school or parents are, I believe Pennsylvania has something in place that says, if you can't get your kids to school, then you're going to be fined up to and including potential jail time, right? Like and so that's, so they were kind of referring to that, saying, how can we?
So I can respond to that and say we used to have the same thing here, and we used to see fines for parents who didn't send their students to school. we used to have judges who looked at possible jail time for parents who did not send their children to school. I would say for the past at least 10 to 15 years, we have not gotten that kind of cooperation in order to do that. And so, I think that, differs from state to state. But I know, a lot of us have felt here that we've lost a little bit of our hammer, that will incent a parent to send a child to school who maybe doesn't want to attend school, or gives the parent a hard time in the morning when it's time to get ready and go to school. So we've created a lot of different in-house programs to try to incent students to come to school and support the families in having productive, proactive strategies to get students to school. So we are trying within our system to come up with new and creative programs and strategies. But as far as fines and jail time, I think the time for that has passed, and I don't know that will be coming back.
Right, and I obviously we wouldn't go to that
Yeah.
sort of extreme, but
Yeah.
those were some examples that these folks.
Yeah.
So they were reaching out to Delegate Krebs saying, "Can you guys introduce some legislation potentially down in Annapolis to deal with some of these issues?" Because sometimes parents just aren't doing the right things. It's like, their kids don't want to go to school; they want to stay home and play on their computer all day. And when you've got a kid's, $4,000 computer equipment in their room, it's hard to, well, maybe parents aren't doing the right things to entice their kids to get back to school. And so I'm not saying that we should, I think that that's maybe like a quick step too far
Right.
in terms of taking legislation down to Annapolis, but because Delegate Krebs was reaching out to me saying, well, I wouldn't have any idea how to write that sort of legislation. Can you guys talk about whether this is a significant problem in the school system? And then if it is, maybe have some recommendations from, say, a CAC or maybe even the TAC, the Teachers Advisory Council or the Community Advisory Council, make some recommendations of, is this something that they would want to introduce as legislation to try to help the situation? I don't know exactly what that would look like, but.
And it would probably be good to get the state's attorney involved in the conversations as well.
So, but is that something that, we'd want to look at attendance data, right? Like, and decide if it is just certain schools or certain individuals, and then what are typical, I know we've put been working on plans, but if there's a legislative angle to improving the plans that we're trying to put together, is that something that could be discussed with the CAC, or?
Yes, I think the best way to move forward might be for me to be able to meet with Cabinet about that and determine what might be the next best steps to get maybe CAC and TAC involved, and then look at, is there something that legislatively may help, and if so, what might that look like?
Right. Okay. And then kind of tacking on to that is just the laxness of things across the system with, kids coming to school in pajamas and sleeping on the desks, and, principals and teachers maybe just saying, well, we're glad that they're actually here, and there not being ramifications for sleeping on the desk. Like, I think we have to get back to, the pandemic is past, and we need to get back to structure and discipline and the fundamentals of learning. And so, I know that, Ms. McCabe, you've been doing a lot of things to try to enforce that. But, Ms. Herbert, did you have some comments that you wanted to
I wanted to say, and I think Mr. Streeter will agree on that, and with me teaching for many, many years, and also Dr. Dorsey, it's the same Johnny or the same Susie that missed 15 days in my class that missed in the next class. It's those repeat offenders, and 99% of my class was always there. It was just that one or two. Don't you agree, Dr. Dorsey?
And the ones who kept coming back to school, for me, the ones who had the great attendance were the ones with the behavior problems.
Right. It all works together.
They
That's
wanted
it. That's it. Yes.
They wanted to be at school to get that structure that they
Right.
weren't getting someplace
Right.
else.
But, just from being in the classroom, you all continue. It's the same same child all the time that either comes late or has to leave early or doesn't come at all. See, I've
Just to respond to that, I think one of the other pieces is the trauma that our students are facing individually is something that very few people can actually comprehend. If you actually, as we get to know what some of our students are going through and some of our families are going through, like, I know we have some students coming in and not wearing attire that might fit what we would expect or want. And it's not maybe a lack of effort of us trying to supply those items and things for families, but when we have staff that say, we're just glad they're here, because then at least they're here in our building and we can work with them. We have to pick and choose with some of our kids that have significant trauma, like our cases of students that have been subject to abuse and whatnot, and substance abuse that's up. That impacts our kids. We got to handle with carers where we have students who have witnessed parents that have they found their parents deceased. I mean, these things are realities that our kids are facing. So when those kiddos are coming into school, we're glad if they're here late in pajamas. That's great. We're glad you're here. So we certainly are working through that on a daily basis, across, and it does impact certain communities at a greater need, because some of our neediest communities, especially the smaller the school, the more concentrated from a geographical perspective where some of those needs are. So we know those exist. We have a lot of things we put in place to try to support students. Our PPWs particularly work super hard to do individual incentives with students, go to homes and meet with families to try to work with those kids to get them into school. And our schools at large do a lot of things. There are differences in what other states do. One of the biggest things in Maryland is, I don't know the year, but it went from it being a student issue and a juvenile issue to an adult criminal court. So it goes to the adults now. And when the adult piece is there, the burden of proof in adult court, one of the, just an anecdotal byproduct of that is, if a parent's found guilty, they may not be able to gain employment because now they have a record. So there's a lot of defense that goes into defending that parent in that truancy case, because now we're trying to help get the kid in school, but now we've taken the parent out of their ability to have employment. So those pieces all compound, which, when Maryland made that change of being a juvenile issue to an adult issue with a truancy, it had a big impact to that. And I'm not saying what's right or wrong, and Ms. Vigney, to your point, I don't think we're suggesting we go into those levels, but we have a lot of that going on with our kids. And it's usually just a few kids over and over, right? It's not pervasive throughout the entire system and the school, but there are some really, really needy students, which are families, and certainly if they have 2 or 3 students, those 2 or 3 kids are impacted. Again, I don't want to lose sight on the trauma impact. That's why we really need to think about, I think Dr. Dorsey, you mentioned teaching kids behavior. A lot of these same students need us to be teaching them behaviors, good routines, and things like that. So I think that's important that we share that as we talk about truancy and some of the concerns that our school counselors are bringing up. We serve all kids, and
yes, we do. That's our job.
Yes.
Thank you. All right. So, Ms. Savigny, anything else?
I'm good.
You're good? Anything else for the good of the order? Really? Okay, here we are. Okay.
You picked a good one, Commissioner Vigliotti. It was a short one.
Yes. He did ask me. He wanted to know about God. He is such a great person, and he'll make a great commissioner. But he wanted to make sure he was on time, had the right attire, and then we did a lot together this summer, and he wanted to know what time, and I said 8 o'clock. So I'm sorry, we're a little over, but if Mr. Kyler would have been running this, it'd have been to 9 or 9:30.
Well, it's funny because he said he wasn't sure whether or not you guys would want him back, and I said, no, I'm sure they would be happy to have you back as a visiting commissioner.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
But will he keep his keep quiet? All right, here we go. On Wednesday, December 21st, we have a FY24 operating budget work session here in this room at 125 North Court Street. And on Wednesday, January 11th, 2023, at 5 p.m., we have a board meeting with public participation in this room here, 125 North Street. And at 7 p.m. on Wednesday, January 18th, we have another FY24 operating budget hearing in the boardroom at 125 North Court Street at 7 p.m. That's a change in time there, but well, compared to the rest of them.
Wear your ugly sweaters on the 21st.
Oh, okay. And I do wish all of you a happy holiday, and I want to especially thank you all because we'll try not to make it late. Thank you very much. Happy holidays to everyone. I need a motion to adjourn. By Ms. Battaglia, because that was my job.
I'll second.
For years. I need a second.
I'll second.
Ms. Savigny, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The meeting is adjourned.